All right, hey, welcome back to the show. I'm Great Grandpa Phoebe. This is Grandpa's Travelogue, and joined with my guest today is Shane.
Yeah.
What's going on, man?
Oh, nothing much.
Yeah.
Just fixing ACs.
Yeah,
like
right.
Always.
Yeah, let's talk about some geothermal energy and all of this. So as I was researching this topic, I came across this news story from just earlier in the spring of 2022, and gyrotrons. Have you ever heard of a gyrotron before?
No.
All right, so they use them. It's almost like it's like a laser beam that they use to melt plasma in nuclear fusion reactions. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds a little above my pay grade, but you know.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know about it until yesterday. But like from what I'm seeing, it's not a laser per se, but it's like using microwave frequencies. Anyway, they're using it. This guy starting a company. A guy worked at MIT, and they're using it to drill into the earth super deep holes. Right. Like if you're to drill into the earth with like a normal drill bit, like you get it to a certain depth and it gets so hot and the rock gets so hard. Right. You're just like you drill until you break the bit and then you replace it essentially. But this thing can drill with these like microwaves essentially, like focused in like a probably like a foot hole or so or whatever. And what's really crazy about it, I guess, is that when you drill normally into the earth, you need this like filler type of material, okay?
So it doesn't collapse?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly, because there's so much pressure around it, it'll just collapse and then it's useless. But what happens when they're using this giant laser, right, is that like the sides of the hole turn into like a glass, I guess.
Oh, wow.
Which,
okay.
Yeah, in like a circular formation, which is, I guess, super strong.
So what does it do with the material that it's drilling through? Is it liquefied?
Or like vaporized? Right. I'm not really sure. Yeah, like...
Because that was my first thought when you're digging. The problem is removing the material you're going through.
Yeah. Yeah, so, that's a good point.
I don't know.
I'm not sure. I know their goal is, like, they haven't completely finished an entire test, but I guess gyrotrons are like proven industrial like technology, so everyone's like, well, we pretty much know what's going to happen, but so
it just sounds like a made up thing that you would find at like a county fair.
Yeah.
Jump on the gyrotron. Yeah. It's $2. You just spin around. It's like the astronaut training.
Yeah.
That I'm imagining there's something to do with a gyroscope.
20 G's and a F-14 or something like that. Yeah, I dig it. I don't know. I was just kind of but they're drilling these holes super deep, right? And this is where the geothermal part is. Okay. Is where you get down so deep that you can get to, I think they're probably gonna send water down. I don't know how they do it, but like essentially they're gonna run the heat of the center of the earth up to the top through steam, and then they're also what's really crazy is that they're doing it at old coal plants and old like natural gas power plants where they already have the turbine like set up, and they're like retiring some of these old power plants. Right. They're already set up to the grid. Everything's already set to go.
That's interesting.
It's real crazy.
So they're gonna use geothermal. A loop, I'm assuming, of some type of liquid. Glycol or whatever equivalent can handle those kind of temperatures.
Exactly.
And then make steam using that and spin a turbine.
Yes.
That's super cool.
Yeah. Isn't it? Yeah, for sure.
I mean, yeah.
Like
it's almost like this is so simple it just might work.
I know, right?
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Huh.
Like, and for me to just be able to explain it pretty well, as far as like it's not that there's like not that many moving parts,
It's just accomplishing the first thing, which is getting down to where it's hot. That's and how deep that goes or how deep that is, I don't know. Right. But
they're saying their goal is super crazy too. They're like saying we can dig this hole in 100 days.
Like, oh God! And so they can just drop them around.
Right.
Oh man.
And so I mean, who knows if they can? I guess they're doing that right now. And we're about to find out, but I like they said that like to drill a hole like half that deep for like a regular drilling company, it takes like 2 years and, you know, millions and millions of dollars. And
right.
It's going to cost like $500,000 and it'll take 100 days and like all kinds of really cool things happening.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
To me, that it just, you comparing the price difference, it made me think of 3D printing homes. Have you seen those? It's like a giant portable 3D printer that just puts concrete down.
Definitely.
It's super cool, but the cost efficiency of it is pretty good. Like
because same types of ideas as far as like when you can knock down the time that it takes to build something, then you don't have to have people on site, on the job site, getting paid every day. Right. You know, like. You know, like it happens real quick, turnover. The thing about 3D houses, I was looking into those a lot recently.
Right, because you were talking about doing like the tiny home and that's the whole conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why we're here right now, because like I want to build a tiny home eventually here. Hopefully next spring is what I'm shooting for right now.
Nice.
And so what goes in with the 3D printing a house is that you're basically 3D printing concrete in like, you know, in different patterns so that you can like have wider walls and whatever, you know, have it like reinforced and things like that. Insulation is kind of a deal, you know, trying to make sure that the walls are insulated.
Right.
I guess a lot of it's almost like building an Adobe house in a sense.
Adobe house, not familiar.
Yeah, like a clay.
Oh, okay.
A clay house, like in a desert region, kind of a thing. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, like they're way less expensive on the building side, but also like to make it into a real house, there's also a different type of cost to it.
Right. The logistics behind running wires through concrete.
Right. Yeah. Rebar. Right. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or you know, ductwork.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Yeah. Although in that kind of application, depending on the size of the house, I could see mini splits working well because it's such an isolated kind of, not airtight but close to it environment, you know?
Yeah.
So you'd be able to isolate one, you know, say a room this size, like your master bedroom or whatever would have one mini split head unit for that room. And
what is a mini split head unit?
A mini split has many different names. Some people call them inverters. Some people call them heat pumps because most of them are technically heat pumps, but not all of them.
Okay.
Basically, it's a small ductless air conditioning system that just has like a cylindrical blower wheel, a long skinny blower wheel that blows air from the room across a cold evaporator coil.
Okay.
That's actually in the room, normally close to the ceiling, and then the condenser is outside.
Yeah.
So it uses much less refrigerant. It uses DC voltage, so it's very efficient when it comes to energy usage.
Yeah, you can hook it straight to the solar panels too, probably.
And the install is really easy. The only problem is maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah. Leaks don't typically happen in those kind of systems, but water is a thing that happens because you're on your evaporator, because it's so cold, you're condensing onto it, you know, all the humidity in the room.
Okay.
So it's dehumidifying while it's air conditioning, but you have to put that water somewhere. And if you don't do your proper maintenance, it's going to get moldy, mildewy, nasty, clog up the drain. Then you're going to have water in your house, spilling like nasty, gross water on like all down the wall and everything. Yeah. So mini splits are their own kind of thing. There are a lot of companies that specialize in just mini splits.
Is that the same as like a reverse split? Am I saying that right?
I don't know exactly.
As far as I was just literally researching this 10 minutes ago. Yeah. But like they were showing like as far as like heat pumps are concerned, I guess. When you're switching from season to season from hot to cold, they had this like they called it like a reverse splitter or some kind of a splitter.
A reversing valve?
Maybe.
A three-way valve?
Yeah, it looked like it was like crazy and like, but it basically turned the whole system upside down.
Right, yeah. So
and then there was like two man, I'm getting all the terminology mixed up right now.
That's okay. That's literally the hardest part of HVAC. Like going to school and learning all the terminology. I still struggle with it. Yeah. So no worries.
Yeah, I mean, I've studied refrigerators and things like that a little bit over the years. It's like an expander valve. Is that what I'm looking for?
A
Like
TXV, maybe a thermal expansion valve.
okay.
That's a type of metering device. So that's where I get where you're going.
Because like I'm thinking compressor, and then it goes around the coils, and then there's like, and then it hits the like some kind of a valve that like like releases pressure. I want to say.
Yes, you're exactly right. So this is here. I know this isn't great for listeners, but
yeah, I'll try to like get a picture of this and put it on the screen here.
Yeah, you can find a lot of references. So what you're talking about is a metering device. So you start at your compressor, which is considered like the heart of an AC system. So that's your pump. That's what.
I was about to say. Yeah. I was about to ask that.
You're taking a. Let's see. You're taking a low temp liquid and compressing it.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. You cannot put liquid in a compressor. That is bad for compressors because liquids don't compress. It's a low temperature vapor, and then it's compressed into a high temperature, high pressure vapor.
Okay.
Which goes back to the evaporator.
How do you? I guess this is a physics question, but like, as far as I don't think generally of water or like a liquid being vapor at lower temperatures, you know?
So that's okay. When I say low temperature vapor, I mean that it's lower than the high temperature of that vapor in the system.
Okay.
Not necessarily cold, but it's cooled down compared to what it was when so
cool, learning stuff.
So what you were initially asking me about
that makes sense
is probably a TXV or a thermal expansion valve. So basically what that does is it meters the amount of refrigerant going into the evaporator, which is the cooling part of the AC. So if I'm trying to think of an example that's kind of like real world. So the fans at like Disney World that have the mist, the spray, the water mist that's on it.
It's like almost like a pure evaporator, right? Like it's
in a way, yes. Okay. So what I'm getting at is if you were just hit with a stream of water, it wouldn't feel as cold. In a way, this is kind of more an analogy than an exact representation of how this works. Okay. But in a mist form or a vapor in this scenario, it's much cooler because it's expanded. Everything is spaced apart.
Expander. That's the thing. That's the word I was looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
So you're like releasing.
It's a high temperature, high pressure liquid. Okay. And you are spraying it through a straw, essentially, and it's flashing into gas, vapor. I don't know if I'm mixing this up or not. So yeah, it's a liquid in the condenser going all the way to the metering device, and then if you look at this diagram, you can see the pressures are about 446 is what this is showing as an example, and then immediately afterwards it's down to 118 psi. Okay. So that flashing effect is where you're going from a large tube to a small tube, and when it comes out it's at a lower pressure because it has to squeeze through this hole and then escape as quickly as possible because it's trying to equalize the pressures or temperatures. Cool. This is something I wanted to mention when it comes to like understanding the basics of how HVAC works. Yeah. Temperature and pressure always have a relationship. Okay. So like a real world example would be boiling water in like Colorado. Right. High altitude.
It boils quick.
Exactly. It's a lower boiling point because there's less pressure.
Yeah.
So that is a huge part.
It's like water almost wants to boil. If you have water in space, will it just boil instantly?
Depends on if you're in the shade or not, I guess.
Right. Yeah, maybe just a little bit temperature increase.
If it's direct sunlight in a vacuum of space, probably would immediately evaporate.
Because you got to think astronauts can live in space, you know.
Right.
So like 0G isn't gonna boil your blood,
Right.
necessarily.
Yeah. But I'm saying like no protection of any sort from the ridiculous UV light coming from the
Right.
sun.
Oh yeah.
That's gonna
That'll
immediately boil that water.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's because you have no protection from the atmosphere at all at that point either.
Yeah.
So, all right, so let's get away from the physics of it for a minute.
Sure.
As far as like conceptually, I was learning about heat pumps as like obviously heating and cooling your house, but also you can use a heat pump to use a heat like a water heater, right?
I have seen some. I remember you mentioned this recently, and I was like, really? I don't know. I've never heard of that. So I have seen one example where the hot coil, whichever time of the year it may be, is warming water in a water tank, and I'm like, that's such a great idea. Like you're killing two birds with one stone. You're using potential energy that's already been harvested. You're just applying it to a different medium.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
exactly.
That's a really, really good idea. For people who don't know, a heat pump is just an air conditioner that can also put heat out into the comfort space.
Okay.
Using like a reversing valve is what I mentioned it earlier. So it's basically a three-way valve that makes the evaporator become the condenser, and the condenser becomes the evaporator. So think of it like you're turning a window unit around. You're just spinning it around in the window. So you're blowing cold air out and warm air in.
Yeah, because if you stand behind an air conditioner outside of it, the hot air comes out the back for sure.
Yep. Yeah. So there's some logistical issues with that to a certain degree, because if your cold coil is outside and it's below freezing,
right? Yeah. Then you have to protect it from freezing.
You run a defrost cycle. So you take the discharge pressure from the high side of the system, send it around the coil to melt any ice building up on the
So it's like built directly into the system.
Yeah.
Wow. Right on.
Yeah.
And I've heard that it's still economical and more efficient that way. Even so.
Depending on the age of the system, if it's from like when they first started making heat pumps in the mid 2000s on a residential level, because I do come across those from time to time, and I'm like, God, this thing, I can't believe it's still running. Well, I shouldn't say can't believe it's still running. It's just a shock to see that
they don't make them like they used to.
Well, more like the ones they make now are significantly more efficient and better designed and has like fail safes. So the upside to running a heat pump is you're not using fossil fuels. You're not using you're not burning wood. You're not using propane or natural gas in your furnace. So you're just using electricity to move refrigerant around. And blow air across a coil.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I heard about another heat pump idea that's pretty cool. It's like a ventless dryer that is just completely compact, as far as there's like you don't have to vent any air out of it. Like all of the hot air stays in it, goes through a coil in the bottom and comes out the other side. But they're using a heat pump as a dryer. I guess they're a little bit more expensive but more efficient.
Ventless dryer.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I wonder if they're I've never seen an example of what you're talking about, so I can't really comment on it.
They're not too popular in America yet, apparently.
What's the application like? What for clothes?
Clothes dryer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, you're still using electricity, of course.
Yeah.
But I'd imagine it's much more efficient. Yeah. Probably all DC voltage, so you're using less. Yeah. Amp draw.
Yeah, and they said that it was. There's some downsides and upsides to it. I guess it doesn't get quite as hot as like a normal dryer.
Right.
And it is a little bit more expensive, but you'll make that money back from the electricity bill too.
Right.
And so, I mean, just run the dryer a little bit longer. And
or squeeze your clothes out before you throw them in, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. It's interesting you say that it doesn't get quite as hot, because that's a common complaint with residential heat pumps.
Okay.
Because the air coming out of the vents can feel cold on your skin.
Yeah.
Do you know your skin temperature? I think it's like 94 degrees or something like that.
Okay.
So if air coming out of your vents is 88 degrees and you put your hand over it, you're like, oh, why is that cool?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
my heat's on.
I have felt that before,
Yeah.
and it did weird me out.
Yeah.
You know.
But it's
I'm like,
actually keeping the room at 70 degrees.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
It just feels cool because of your skin temperature.
I didn't know that. That's weird.
I get constant complaints in the winter of specifically older, more frail women that are like, my heat's not working. And it's like, no, it is. It's just, not 140 degrees coming out of the vents like you're used to with your old oil furnace from, 1950 or whatever.
Right.
So,
I just got to keep the place cooking, you know?
Yeah. Nobody's shoveling coal into it in the basement,
So that's part of the issue with just straight geothermal, like what I was trying to talk about initially, right? Mm-hmm. So with the geothermal system I wanted to put in, it would be like I was going to dig out like a 6-foot trench with an excavator and then lay down a bunch of underground water pipe, you know, run probably like a glycol kind of solution, antifreeze maybe or something like that. Yeah,
something that can go well below zero.
Yeah. And then, just run a ton of that underground. Mm-hmm. And then, so you keep it at a constant 55 degrees, which is great in the summertime, right?
Right. Like 55 is pretty cold when it's 30 outside.
Yeah, it's freezing. Like, I remember even just this summer, it was like we had some 100-degree days. Mm-hmm. And then, a few days later at night, it dropped down to, 60s. 4. Yeah. And I was like, it's really cold out here.
Yeah, for sure. I've been thinking about this application a lot since you first brought it up to me. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if warming the concrete is going to be the way to go. Because you'd be losing, it's a 3-dimensional block of concrete. You're going to be losing heat out of...
Well, this is... the concrete idea is a different idea. That's a separate... Okay. Because the way that I was going to work that, and the way that I've seen that done in other passive houses, is that you position your house so that the windows are south-facing. Okay. So that in the wintertime, when the sun is low... it hits directly onto this concrete floor, and that's what heats it up, essentially. And so it absorbs the heat throughout the day, and it stays warm at night. And it works. I've seen it happen before. Mm-hmm. And that's what I wanted to have done with the concrete floor. But as far as using the geothermal for heating and cooling, I would want to have a pump going to a radiator type of situation with a fan going through it, you know? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that would work perfectly fine. So what you're talking about is definitely considered geothermal, but it's not what I think of as a HVAC service technician when it comes to geothermal. I'm thinking of an American standard geothermal systems in somebody's basement, which is obviously much more complicated than what you're hoping to do, but it's essentially using the same properties,
exactly.
The difference is you're only using 2 mediums. You're using your glycol loop and air, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, you could count the concrete pad as well, but that's more of like a bank. Think of that like an energy bank, you know? Yeah. So with a residential geothermal system, there's actually 3 mediums. So there's the refrigerant, the glycol, and then the air.
That's I don't understand.
So you're using the refrigerant to...
So that's a separate loop.
Yes, yeah. Basically, your refrigerant, basically your glycol is acting as your condenser. So that'd be your outdoor unit, the one that throws the heat off. Mm-hmm, so you're pumping the heat into the ground instead of outside from inside the house. Yeah. So your refrigerant is making the coil cold and the evaporator cold, so you're getting your air circulation cool that way. Mm-hmm. But your refrigerant is now hot because it's absorbed the heat from your house. Yeah, so what do? You exchange that heat into the glycol, which goes down into the ground and is absorbed by
Yeah.
the earth. So
Okay.
so
I was wondering what the difference was, I guess, like that's interesting.
three mediums. That's
yeah.
weird to think about, but
yeah. Have you ever installed any of these types of systems before?
No. Geothermal is very kind of niche.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fading out in favor for heat pumps.
Oh, okay.
Because you're getting similar efficiency.
Right.
And it's a lot less labor.
Yeah.
You don't have to dig into the ground and make a coil, under your front yard.
Yeah.
Of glycol. So.
Is there a way to like combine the two systems, or is that just kind of
yes. Most geothermal systems are a heat pump.
Oh, okay.
So that way you can reverse the cycle.
Okay.
And make your evaporator that used to make your house cold.
Yeah.
That's now your condenser.
Okay.
And the ground is your evaporator.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Okay.
It's weird when you think about it that way.
One of the big differences too is like, which is weird, is maybe it's not weird. It's probably just labor costs, but like, if you like look up how to like install some kind of a ground unit, right? Like it's gonna be like $15,000.
Yeah.
Is what I've seen. And
what do you mean by a ground unit? Just like a split system in a
no?
In a
I'm
house,
just talking about
okay.
like the installing like a professional like underground system, like what I was talking about.
Okay.
Digging trenches running lines and then the whole unit, everything set up.
15,000 sounds about right. Obviously, my expertise is in residential service. That's what I've been doing for the last year and a half, full time plus some. And,
right.
So a regular geothermal system is probably closer to 20,000 right about now because prices are just ridiculous at the moment. It's the hardest part is getting our hands on equipment.
Well, and then also, but if you price like a DIY situation, right?
You're just supplying the material, not the labor.
Right. Because I can rent an excavator for like $300-something a day.
Right.
Do all the digging in one day. Lay the lines out. And then at that point, like, even if you use like the most bare bones materials at that point, I mean, like you get like 100-watt pump condenser essentially, right? And then run that into like a used car radiator, say, in a box with a fan. I mean, you're going to be getting like cooling and heating type of effects happening.
So yes, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around exactly how you would want to have this set up. So you have your loop in the ground, and that's being pushed around by a pump, obviously.
Yeah.
So how are you making it cold? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, so you have your ground loop, which is heating your house. Where do you get that heat from? The sun is what you were saying? That a concrete pad would be absorbing sunlight throughout the day?
Well, I was just thinking that the ground itself would stay at 55 degrees.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you're saying that it's a flawed design ultimately because I need to have like two circulations happening to move the heat away.
Yes and no. My only concern would be the amount of heat that's being absorbed by your radiator, which would essentially be your evaporator, right? If that's that's at 55 degrees constantly, that the glycol flowing through it, how much of the heat in the room is going to be absorbed through that? Okay. That's what you're going to have to play around with. Gotcha. Whether it be increasing or reducing the amount of glycol in the loop, or adding some kind of whether it could be as simple as like a window unit air conditioner or something like that, just to provide either heat.
And I'm not opposed to supplementing, with like
I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh no, but like as far as like in my mind, it's like you have the condenser evaporator in the ground, one in your house, one in the ground, and the compressor in between, and then obviously the fans,
Right.
But
so the biggest difference between your application and like a regular air conditioner is you don't have that massive pressure and temperature difference happening.
Oh, okay.
You know, you're not making a coil 40 degrees in order to make 60 degree air. You know, you're going to have a 55 degree coil, and that might give you 75 degree air if the air in the house is 85 degrees, which is still 10 degrees cooler than you would normally have it. But
I mean, I could basically just soak a bunch of towels and run a fan through it at that point, right?
I mean, you could. Yeah.
Depending on the humidity.
So that is actually a good point, because I wanted to bring up some kind of rules of thumb for HVAC, as far as like thermodynamics go, and I'm not an expert in that by any means, but heat always wants to go to cold, no matter the situation. Heat goes to cold because heat is more energy, and the atoms bouncing around. There's more active energy, and it's trying to equalize. Like all things, you know, like water. If it's higher pressure and you release it, it's going to try to go to that lower pressure system. Yeah. So that's a big part of understanding, you know, how this stuff is going to work. So I like the idea. I would love to see it in practice. You know?
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, kind of why we're having this conversation. Like, is it actually feasible? I mean, I know they make more professional units. Right. Like. Yeah. And if I could find one used, maybe, or something like that, or like, you know, some kind of a deal on it. Even if I just got one brand new, you know, like, would it be worth it, and would it just pay for itself over time? You know.
Especially, yes, if you're using solar. Yeah, of course, because that's free, essentially free energy. You know.
Yeah, once you pay the system back with its own energy.
Yes, then you have to pay the other system that you're running off of it back. Yeah. But yes, totally would pay for itself over time. My only concern with a permanent in-ground system like that in a DIY setting is repairs. Right. Yeah. If something goes wrong and that's your only heat source. Yeah. You're kind of SOL.
As far as the heat is concerned, I would not rely on that as my only heat source. Okay. Because
you were saying 55 degrees is pretty cold, which is where I guess I was having a hard time wrapping my head around geothermal, because when I think of geothermal, I think of it as being able to make heat in a house. So that makes a lot more sense. You're more just trying to take the heat out of your living space and put it into the ground because it's cooler than your living space. That on paper all makes sense. That would all work. How efficiently is the question. Right. How many radiators are you going to have to put together with how many fans? And you know, are you going to build a ductwork system? Like,
well, it's a small house, right? Right. Like, so it's like once you're in the room, you're in the room.
Right. So when you initially brought this up to me, I really like the idea. Like, I think it's awesome that you're even considering taking on this kind of endeavor on your own in a DIY setting. But in my opinion, there may be better ways. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Well, you know what I'm here to learn, and like that's why we're sitting down. I want to give a talk about this next week, so I need to know what I'm talking about.
Okay. So realistically, it depends on what your budget is like, of course. If you can get a scratch and dent heat pump mini split, like we were talking about earlier. That will heat and cool 500 square feet. I'm assuming that's a pretty big tiny house from my understanding. You would be able to heat and cool that space using one mini split head. Wow. Okay. And your condenser outside. So even if it's like a trailer style, the condenser outside is only, 2.5 feet wide, maybe 3.5 feet tall. And, maybe 10 inches deep. So you can smack it on the back of it, or like where you would put your propane tank if it was a camper. Right. It would go right there, and you could hook it up. Nice. So I think in this application, especially if you're going to have solar, you're going to want to use as little electricity as you can. Right? Yeah, definitely. So mini split, great solution to that. It uses all DC voltage. It's incredibly efficient. You're gonna be comfortable, which is crazy to think about. And I don't know if you're talking about pouring concrete and everything, so it's obviously not going to be a mobile application. But no. I don't mean to discourage you by any means. Like, do it, please do it. Yeah, but for sure. I'm thinking from being I I don't want to say a professional because I'm constantly learning and I feel like I know
Yeah, yeah.
very little about what I'm talking about now.
That's why I'm building the thing.
Right.
So I know
Yeah.
like what I'm getting into. If,
Yeah.
You know, like.
If I were you, I would do a trial. I would make a smaller version with you know one used radiator.
Yeah.
Find the size that you like.
Right.
And
right, yeah.
see how big of a loop you need to actually get results using you know the theory.
And also, I think that regardless of if it's like, you know, like the end all be all of
Yeah.
what I actually need, I think that it's a worthwhile experiment just because, I mean, the way that weather patterns are changing currently and possible heat waves and possible extreme pulls on our electricity grid that like, I mean, if you have, I saw a report that really scared me recently. It said that like there's like a band through America from about, you know, the Gulf of Mexico near between Texas and Louisiana up to like Chicago, right? Just like this band that they're saying they're predicting by 2050 that there'll be like one day a year in the summer that hits 125 degrees, right? And that's gonna like if you live in that region, there's no way that you will be able to survive without an air conditioner, essentially.
But that's a whole other problem where the power grid can't handle every single house running their air conditioning at full tilt all the time.
Yeah.
So there's going to be like brownouts.
Yes.
At that point.
That's what I'm saying, and that's why like
you're okay. So ultimately, your goal is self-sustainability.
Well, yeah, just trying to you know, provide backup systems for people. You know.
Sure.
In case things do really go down, you know, like they're predicting, then like at least like there's cool places where people can be, and it's like building little caves for people essentially.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. I mean,
55 degrees is way better than 125.
Even if it's 85 degrees in there, and it's a shaded room, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a good point.
And yeah, so getting efficiencies down, getting the lowest amount of just like if I have 100 watt solar panel or something, you know, like we can all stay cool. This will be fine. You know,
well,
like
that's what I was thinking the whole time is solar. I don't understand why what people have against solar.
No,
I mean,
well,
maybe the startup cost and
there's pros and cons of that too.
Rare earth metals are a big thing, I'm sure.
And also the manufacturing process pollutes a little bit.
Oh. Okay.
Not as much as coal, obviously. Not anywhere near as much as coal, but there is like this, you know, still substantial amount. Yeah, I know.
It's so frustrating when you talk about like renewable energy and people just are saying nay because it's not green. Like, well, what you're doing
what we're doing right now is nowhere even close to where like it could be. Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting to me that a lot of people in my field are, well, I mean, I'm young. I'm 27. I'm very green to the industry, but the average like HVAC worker is probably 45.
Okay.
So there's not many new people coming into the field.
Yeah.
But what I was getting at is that because of that, you know, average age being higher, there's a lot of obviously Republican people, which are typically like global warming isn't a thing, like that doesn't exist, and it's like
just conservative mindset in general.
Yes.
Where you're just like, well, I just want things to stay the same.
Yeah.
You know, it's easier this way.
I had this conversation with all 4 of my instructors through college and asked, well, I think it just came up naturally in class. Like, do you think that we are directly affecting the Earth's climate? And I'm like, well, yes.
Yeah.
But the Earth is also cyclical.
Right.
So
yeah.
We're due for. Is it an ice age that we're due? It's either one extreme or the other that
I'm
we
not
are.
Sure. Yeah.
We're due for it. So I'm sure that human beings since the Industrial Revolution have been adding, you know, expediting this process. But it's not like why wouldn't we try to do better?
Exactly.
So
you know, not to mention the fact that we're gonna run out of that shit at some point in the near future.
Yeah.
Like, and we're going to have to switch over anyway. It's better to switch over now and use that as like an emergency supply. Yeah, exactly. Like it would be amazing to have those materials still here in 100 years from now, you know? Not only that, but we
happens
make
if we-
plastic out of them. We make like all kinds of other shit out of it that
Yeah.
like polymers and like all these things that like we take for granted, but like it would be really great to have those things too, you know?
I'm just thinking about the event of like a solar flare.
Right. Yeah, that's
That would be.
that's a whole.
It would set us back like 100 years.
Solar flare knocking out the grid plus a heat wave like that.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably understating 100 years. Like, the entire infrastructure would be gone
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I know.
and that's, I mean, that is a whole other conversation to
Yes.
have about,
Yes.
you know,
'Cause there's not really
electrical
even-
grid.
There's not anything we can even do to prevent that, right?
No,
Unless
no.
we're just, I mean, if we're,
Unless we start
it's
spraying
like a,
stuff into the atmosphere to try to give
Right.
us like an extra ozone layer.
yeah, was the EMP, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah. Electromagnetic pulse.
like pulse
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah.
Will that knock out like solar panels
Yes,
or?
100%. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's
hmm Anything with circuitry.
yeah.
Anything that uses electricity.
Does it have to be using electricity at the time that it happens?
So that's an interesting conversation. For a little while, I was looking into prepping.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Like
for sure.
doomsday to
Yeah.
a certain degree. You know, it's good to have that in the back of your head, but don't be a fanatic about it. That's kind of where I
If
land on
can
most
keep,
things.
If I can keep a couple solar panels hanging out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Not
it's-
using them.
Yeah, but what I was getting at is in the event of an EMP or even a nuclear bomb, which from my understanding includes
Right.
an EMP.
Yeah,
blast.
yeah. Especially if they like detonate it up in the atmosphere or whatever
Yeah.
they talk about.
Any vehicle made after like 1995 is not going to work
Okay, yeah,
because
it's
they
all
all
computers.
Yes, exactly. But if you have a carbureted engine with
Yeah.
spark plugs, you know,
So-
those spark plugs are still going to spark. You're still going to have your battery.
Motorcycles, essentially.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
motorcycles still be running around.
Yep. Well, unless they're fuel injected, but yes.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, but I mean,
Yeah.
be a man, you know, get
Right.
a carburetor. I don't know. I always hang out at motorcycle, or I've hung out in a couple friends' motorcycle shops. A few different, a bunch of times, and like
I
it's-
asked you why haven't you ever had a motorcycle?
Right,
You know, but
yeah,
you don't-
yeah.
You said you don't trust
Yeah,
yourself.
I
Fair
didn't
enough.
trust myself.
I mean,
I trust myself with it now, probably. You know, like
I got a sweet old Honda for you. I told you about it. I think it's a 1974 Honda CB 100,
nice.
and it's actually CL 100 engine swapped. So it's got a shorter gear ratio, but it has more torque.
Yeah.
So
I
it's kind
mean,
of cool, but
yeah.
a little off topic. But
Right,
you know,
right. Like, I mean, motorcycles are rad.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like
just generally. Just,
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Just looking at them, you
Yeah.
know, like everybody knows they're cool.
That
you
guy's
know?
having fun.
Yeah,
basically,
exactly.
no matter what. Yeah, yeah. The only thing I could compare riding a motorcycle to is skateboarding.
Okay.
In my personal life, like
Yeah.
the freedom of being able to just kind of explore and be wherever and do whatever you want
Yeah.
at that moment.
Yeah.
There's something to it, but yeah,
Yeah, it's its own experience for sure.
yeah.
That's interesting.
How did we end up on motorcycles?
I don't
Where were
remember.
we? Where were we?
EMP bombs.
EMPs. That's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And I started talking about cars that are
yeah,
you
and
know,
how I mean, like, so I mean,
wood.
I know
burns
that
hot,
there's
so there's that.
and there's like I remember reading there's like a 12-year cycle of, I think it's 12 years for, like, in the 12th year or every 12 years or something, there's like a zone where solar flares are more likely because, like, the way that the sun is enormous, right? And we're
Right.
always on different sides of it all the time. And so there's like a certain side of the sun that like has solar flares a lot.
It's like a discharge. Like
Yeah. So like
discharge port.
we're in the middle of like a 12-year cycle where we're like on that side of the sun. So if
Interesting.
we make it through that, like, we're probably going to be fine. Like, as far as our generation, you know, which is like crazy. So,
yeah.
you know, it's keeping the fingers crossed right now we
For
make it to
sure.
the other side of the sun.
Then there's like the super volcano.
Right. Yeah.
Yosemite
There's a minefield in front of us.
It's like
for
how
sure.
many world-ending events can you worry and prepare about?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
still live your life.
And then just like, well, Netflix, here we go.
Yeah. Turn on SpongeBob.
What am I really gonna do about this? You know, like, I better, like, I remember watching what was it, The Walking Dead,
Yeah.
and just like, I really like the realism of them exploring the houses for canned food goods.
Yeah.
And just seeing like, well, the expiration date's about to go on all the food canned goods in the entire world.
Yeah.
Essentially, like, that's that was, yeah. I mean, it's
self-sustainability is well, one, it's a difficult thing to learn because it's multifaceted. Like, how
definitely.
do you grow food? I couldn't go out there and, dig into some dirt and stick some seeds in and say, yep, I'm
so
sure
hard.
that's going to grow.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's not like, I don't know, like, I planted a garden and it looked all right to begin with, and then I ended up getting COVID, like, immediately afterwards, and kind of, like,
lost
forgot.
everything.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
sucks.
Because,
That
like,
sucks.
it, like, I was like, I need to get out there, but I really can't right now. Like,
Right.
or I'd forget
Yeah.
about it for a couple days, too many, and then...
So, on the topic of ozone,
Okay.
I felt like this was a good segue. I wanted to talk a little bit about just refrigerants in general, and how the way things are heading with residential air conditioning or just AC in general.
Yeah.
So, if you've done any research on refrigerant, you know that R22 is like your grandpa's favorite refrigerant.
Okay.
It's and for a reason, because it's extremely efficient.
Yeah.
It's like one of the most efficient refrigerants that we have at our disposal.
Wow. Okay.
But
it destroys our
ozone.
ozone.
It destroys ozone. I was
Yeah.
doing a little bit of research, getting some figures recently, or just last night actually.
Yeah.
So R22 is an HCFC refrigerant, which is a hydrochlorofluorocarbon.
Okay.
So chlorine
Yeah.
is what destroys ozone because it separates the O3
Yeah.
molecule into an O2 and an O. So it dissipates that
Oh, shit.
molecule of ozone.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's 1 to 100,000 destruction rate of one molecule of chlorine
Wow.
to 100,000
Wow.
molecules of ozone.
That's
so,
impressive.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is. It is.
it's
So, like CFCs, like in hairspray and stuff like that,
yeah.
that was all abolished.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
I
like,
think
we
it was
got...
around 2010. I think
Yeah.
2010 was when it was completely banned.
Yeah.
Like almost worldwide,
Yeah, for sure.
So you can still go buy a container of R22.
Really?
But it's like $2,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
yeah.
Black market or whatever too.
Well, no, that's like
or-
from the the distributor.
Oh, okay.
So anything
Okay.
that's left in the
Yeah.
wild that's already been made,
Yeah.
you can use, but you
Okay.
can't produce anymore or
Gotcha.
import anymore.
Yeah.
So I would just added like 4 pounds of R22 to a system that was extremely low recently.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
we're gonna have to go back and find the leak because all of that's gonna just end up in the atmosphere. It's
But I did hear that after we banned it, right?
Yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah.
the
No,
ozone like started coming back.
the
like,
hole has been
significantly.
repaired at
Yeah.
like 100% recovery.
That's amazing
It
science,
really is.
That's
Yeah.
just, it's mind-bending.
Yeah. So, on the topic of ozone, the replacement for R22 was R410A, which is what we use now.
Okay. Okay.
That is a blend of 2 refrigerants, which I'll get into later. But 410A removed the chlorine from the
Yeah.
refrigerant that everybody used.
Nice.
So it's now an HFC, so a hydrofluorocarbon.
Okay.
Meaning, if you vent it to atmosphere, you're not destroying ozone as it travels away from the Earth.
Yeah.
So
nice.
the other rating, rather than ozone depletion potential,
Yeah.
which is what they said, that has to be 0 for the next refrigerant we use. Ozone depletion level has to be 0.
Okay.
410A does have a level of 0, but when it comes to global warming potential, which is a different meter that is based on carbon,
Yeah.
410A is still very high. It's at about...
It's a fluorocarbon, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah, that increases the amount of, like, carbon dioxides in the atmosphere,
Yes.
which increases greenhouse gases, blah, yada,
So
yada.
that's why they called it global warming potential. It's not going to actively increase global warming, but
Right.
it could potentially add to the problem. So
along with everything else we're doing at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, I know methane's a huge problem. I know, like, And methane is essentially natural gas, right? Like, or
I couldn't tell you the
there's a lot
difference
of
between the
different
two.
types. Yeah.
Methane is organic, like produced by organisms, from my understanding.
It comes
like
out of the ground, just like...
Yeah.
Well, yeah, methane is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And natural gas is more... Well, obviously, it's still a fossil fuel, but it's
still... It's a hydrocarbon as well.
Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty similar, I think. But yeah, so I mean that's a big deal too, as far as like the way that we heat our houses with natural gas, the way that we cook food with stoves that have natural gas. Like every single connection point has a possibility of leaking natural gas into the atmosphere, which is also very bad.
Although I will say, modern day furnaces, you can get a 98% efficiency furnace.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty rad.
Yeah. So 2% of the fuel you're using is not being actively burned.
Cool.
So it's pretty impressive how far we've come when it comes to like variable speed motors that can adjust the fan speed based on the load in the house, or multi-stage gas valves that'll only allow so much gas through, just enough to meet the set point that it's trying to hit. So.
And that's a big part of this whole equation too. Like everyone's always trying to find like the silver bullet of energy. Like what's going to replace gas? Well, nothing. But
it's not going to replace it. It's gonna.
There's nothing that can do that. Really. Yeah. I mean, like that's like one of the greatest vehicles of energy that we've ever discovered. Essentially.
What's your take on ethanol?
I don't know that much about it, and it's in organic chemistry. I know. It's
from my understanding,
hydrocarbon though, right?
Yes, but it is significantly less from like a gasoline engine as far as
emissions?
Carbon emissions. Yeah.
Okay.
So ethanol.
They're making that from corn, right?
Yes, that is corn. So that kind of becomes a logistical nightmare. Like, where are you making this corn? But at the same time, there could be GMOs used to produce an absurd amount of corn, because it's not being consumed. It's just being used as raw material to make a different product.
I think they did increase the amount of like ears per stock.
Right.
Like genetically, because it was like 2 or 3, and then they raised it to 3 or 4, something like around that ballpark.
I believe that 100%.
Yeah, because I mean, mostly like 90-something% of all corn is GMO.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's.
But you get my point. Like you could go absolutely apeshit with it, and and it would be.
And there's concerns as far as using like corn or any kind of agriculture, right, to power things. You have phosphorus is a big concern.
Okay. Fertilizer in general,
Well, and most fertilizer's pretty available, but phosphorus we mine from the ground. Okay. And for a long time, one thing that they're doing to help that situation is there's a guy, they're using mushrooms essentially. Like they're putting mycelium in the ground, which essentially grabs all the nutrients in the soil and brings it to the plant. It's a big component of old growth forests. Like the largest organism in the entire earth is a mushroom that lives underground under an old growth forest, and I think in Washington State. But it's just massive and just brings nutrients in it. Like, it creates the conditions for a very, very good growing forest. And they're realizing that the same effects happens in soil, to the extent that like where we're just like throwing minerals on the ground every year as fertilizer. Like if you have mycelium in the soil, before there was like a ton of phosphorus runoff, where you had like 80% runoff of phosphorus, say, and it can like grab that phosphorus, keep it in the soil, so that only like 15% runs off. Okay. Which is
just retention, and then you can reuse that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, like there's answers that are starting to be used more, I think, and cropping up here and there, so to say. Yeah. But yeah, it's hard to. There's always going to be like in any of these resources that we're using, like how do you find the one with the highest amount of recyclability,
Right.
or the highest amount of turnover where we can just use the same thing over and over. One thing we're doing here in the shop right now is looking into aluminum air batteries. We just got.
Oh, you mentioned this, yeah.
Yeah. Because as far as recyclability, like it's pretty much like you just put in the aluminum, it corrodes, and then you take it out and recycle it, and then you get it back and put it back in again, like an old aluminum can.
Right.
And it's pretty much a pretty decent cycle as far as material wise. And then you're just using like salt water and carbon.
Okay.
And basically you run a fan through it because it's an aluminum air battery. That air goes through the carbon. It gets pulled in from the electrolyte over to the other side to the aluminum, essentially.
And okay, so it's probably snagging electrons as it's going past. Yes. That's so cool.
Yeah, and that very similar kind of like fuel cell type of idea.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I mean like the hardest part, I think, is just going to be to retrain people how to refuel their cars. Because
that's
people,
going to be tough.
It's
people
just like the convenience,
gas. Yeah. People do like their gas.
Yeah.
So you're telling me after I drink this beer, I could use it to power my car?
Yeah.
Cool.
Just like Mr. Fusion and Back to the Future too. Like, well, not exactly, but like there's a few more steps. But yeah, so I mean, there's there's a lot of different battery technologies that are coming up. I was showing Dad this new oscillator, like a new synthesizer oscillator that I got recently, and like I want to start. I have this new set list where I have like an all synth set, like one man band thing right now. I'm calling it R Ferrari because of reasons I'm going to get into here in a minute, actually. It's a certain type of bacteria called Redondo ferrariendus or something. It's a Latin name, but I like R Ferrari. Like, it kind of gets the point across. Anyway, like in the beginning of the set, I'm using this oscillator, like, and just it has like this wave folding thing, so it sounds super gnarly when you're turning the pitch knob up. And it just sounds like a motorcycle, or like a motorcycle, like revving up to speed, And then I switch the octave, and it goes, and I was like, yeah, like this is rad.
That's cool.
He's like, we should put those in the cars, like, all of our electric cars should have these, just so that people have that like tactile,
Well,
like,
that's what Dodge is doing. Have you seen their electric muscle car?
Yeah.
There's only one that
so
I'm aware
perfect,
of.
though. Yeah,
but
yeah,
it just sounds like a gnarly cammed out, like
That's
just
awesome.
like struggling to idle, but it's just like
I really like the idea
quietly,
of the like real low frequency synths, because like it has that kind of like nostalgia 80s, and also like it sounds electric,
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like a gasoline car. But it sounds like an electric car, right? Like, it's super, I don't know. Like,
it's a little cheesy to me.
Yeah, definitely.
A little cheesy. I mean, I'm as far as like
maybe just to get public opinion, or kind of add like some attention on the thing that you want.
So on your topic of getting to change people's behaviors, like with fueling their cars. I think, excuse me, God, what was it? Hydrogen. Hydrogen fuel cells. I think that's going to be the future of the average car. Yeah. Because I saw that Hyundai put out I think it was just a concept, or I'm not sure yet exactly, but it's a hydrogen hybrid. So it has electric motors with a hydrogen fuel cell. Yeah. And they show them filling it up, and then it goes back out on the track. And I'm like, That's not much different from gasoline for the average person.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
It's going to be way better in the long term. And
for at least like this generation that we're in, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, one step at a time.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
And I guess,
and that's what Toyota's doing. I mean, they came
oh
out
yeah,
with that,
they have a hydrogen engine as well. Yeah,
I think they came out with it in 2015, if I want to.
Right.
But that was their stance though. Was
right.
that like
this is probably where things are going?
Well, not only that, but also the fact that if you sold everyone an electric car right now, the grid would just crash because it's not set up to do that.
Yeah.
But there's
also
hopefully
rising electricity costs.
Yeah.
Like, I'm already feeling it personally. Like,
yeah,
I got my bill this month, and I was looking at my usage from this time this year and this time last year.
Yeah.
Same amount. Amount of kilowatt hours.
For sure.
It's like $80 more this year.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, to your point.
It's important.
Yeah.
Like all of this stuff, like in combination, in concert, I think it's going to be the answer, essentially.
People don't like change.
Which leads me to my most experimental idea, right? I've been looking into a lot. And now I'm not any kind of an expert. I took like one chemistry class in college, right?
Right.
And I'm currently like trying to learn organic chemistry online right now, which is just a ton of like.
You need to talk with
the naming system is just convoluted, but I understand why it exists. Anyway.
You need to talk with John's girlfriend.
Oh right, Jordan.
Jordan. Yeah. You need to talk with Jordan. She's in marine biology.
Yeah.
She deals with chemistry all the time.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah, you definitely have a good conversation with her.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
That might work. Yeah, because I need to find someone who knows what all of this is.
Oh, and she would just pour all of the information on you. Like she's so willing to share what she knows and because she's passionate about it,
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's going for her doctorate right now.
And she wants me to make her a King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard shirt.
Nice.
Because like that show we played at the Grog Shop, I was wearing that shirt that I made. And
I didn't know that was a. Okay.
It was a bootleg.
That's funny. I didn't know. I was like, oh, cool, nice shirt.
Yeah.
I was wearing the band uniform. For people who don't know, BB and I are in a band together.
Oh yeah. We do play in slow mono.
Yeah. I'm the drummer.
Yeah.
So
I play synth and guitars.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good time.
Yeah.
For sure. I like it. It's a fun band.
Yeah.
But anyway, like, so the idea is, right, like, how do we make artificial photosynthesis, right? Which is extremely complex, come to find out, right? Like,
I believe it.
It was invented 450 million years ago, and it hasn't changed since, like, it evolved that far and then just stopped, and then
it's like, this is pretty good. I think.
Like,
I think this will work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
I'm just gonna start sunning.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Vitamin D. I mean. But, because, like, in my mind, I'm like, all right, we get a big jelly green block of chlorophyll, put it in the sun, put some anode, cathode on either side, pump some carbon dioxide into it,
That's how you get
all day long.
A gelatinous cube that, starts moving towards you, and,
And then I'm like, okay, what's it make? Sugar, right? Like, okay, let's just make a...
Then you burn the sugar, right?
Well, apparently. And then this is where the R Ferrari comes in.
Okay.
Because they invented a sugar battery.
Oh, okay. So I was onto something.
Yeah. And there's two different sugar batteries, apparently.
Okay.
One of them runs off of giant sugar monsters, or very tiny bacteria.
Okay.
That are called... that eat sugar and then produce something that hit the cathode, and produce electricity.
Huh.
Which is real crazy.
That is crazy.
And so...
Bioelectricity.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just put a bunch of eels in series.
Yeah.
Or is it parallel? Which one gets more? No.
I mean, we got bioengineering, we got the CRISPR gene, we got... Yeah, right?
We have the technology.
I mean, like...
I'm sorry.
All energy on the planet...
Yeah.
All energy on the planet comes from the sun.
Right.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Even the fossil fuels came from old, like, millions of year old plant matter that decayed and turned into coal and, oil and all these different things. and that's just basically old sun light, right?
Trickle down.
Yeah,
economics,
yeah.
Like, no.
That's the only time
Yeah,
trickle down
yeah.
ever actually works.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Whole different horse race right there. But yeah.
But so it's just stored solar energy.
It really is.
That's so weird. I never thought of it that way.
And so, I mean, when it comes down to it, we all like, and the amount of sunlight that hits the planet every hour, you know, like, is enough to run the planet 10 times over in everything we do. So it's just
to be harnessed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think there's an argument to be made for nuclear. If we're talking about,
sure.
solar power, like
yeah.
Nuclear fission, or I'm sorry, we do fission now.
Yes.
Fusion is the goal.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what the sun is, essentially.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, the technology that we have now, I'm sure there are much more safety procedures in place to prevent, natural disasters like we've seen in, it was Japan a few years back with
Fukushima.
Fukushima.
Yeah. That was
and obviously Chernobyl, like that's
I know 3 Mile Island, all of them.
It all comes down to planning ahead, I guess. But
and the new ones that they're proposing are like micro reactors.
Oh, okay. So even if they were to go bad, it would only be a small area.
It would be a small reaction that's set up to shut down, essentially.
Yeah.
So that it can't. The goal is for it to never, go off, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
And we've learned a lot from Chernobyl. We learned a ton from Fukushima.
Yes.
As far as the water levels, and they did not ever think that the water levels would rise to the levels that they did, and that completely shot their entire plan. And then now we're just basically have a fire hose on it nonstop for the last years, which is
just creating nuclear waste the whole time.
Yeah.
Wow, just trying to prevent a catastrophe.
Yeah, because if they stop doing that, that's even worse. It's a whole but. Yeah, it's a sticky situation.
Also, how long would it take for that nuclear reactor to pay for itself?
Right.
What's the engineering cost alone to create the design and then actually implement it?
It's a lot of money to build.
It would be
those.
30 years before we saw a modern day one if we started building now, right?
Right.
I mean, 30 might be an exaggeration, but because I'm sure the technology is already being developed.
Well, with fusion, right? And that's the goal, is or at least some people's goals. And is it a reality? Is it not? You know,
I've seen Spider-Man 2.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a pure depiction of real hard science. I think that was one of the hard sci-fi novels that I read. Was called Spider-Man 2. It's at the I tier, right? Have you the France experiment? It's called I tier, ITER, and it's sponsored by America, France, Russia, Germany, China. Everyone is coming together on this project, and it's supposedly supposed to be done here in 3 years. They've been working on it for a while, but they're on schedule as far as I've heard, and that's supposed to be the test, version of one that they're gonna make bigger. Once they prove the concept. Mm-hmm. They're saying that this will be able to do the thing, be an actual power plant that produces more than we put into it.
Right.
I mean, that's to be seen, but that's one of the biggest operations, one of the biggest projects and experiments that are happening in that field right now.
Does this have anything to do with the
CERN?
Ion Collider?
That's in Switzerland.
Okay. I know that they're not exactly the same, but I would imagine that a lot of the research was done using that to develop this. I don't know how much you know. And I know
it's
this much about it, so.
Because the CERN, the main thing that CERN does is particle physics, essentially. They're crashing particles into each other at just phenomenal speeds, at even higher speeds than they were 20 years ago.
Right.
and just like finding like the deeper and deeper particles into these worlds that only last, you know, minuscule seconds, femtoseconds, or whatever it is.
Right.
It's incredible. And even like I mean the whole history of that, like Richard Feynman predicting the Feynman diagrams, and like he was able to predict how the particles would explode essentially in these diagrams that he invented in the 80s, and then they all
Before
turned into be true.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was insane. I don't know if he lived to see it. I know he died in the early 90s, but that guy was like, I love talking about that guy in particular. He's just like he was a physics teacher, but like right in when he was in grad school, right? Like he was one of the guys that they're just like, okay, we're gonna take this one kid from grad school to help with the Manhattan Project with Einstein and Fermi and Niels Bohr and like all of these like legendary physicists, and he has to give a speech in front of them about one part of it. And he's like in the bathroom just like puking and like it's like, you can do this. And then like, you know, he gives a speech, and then Fermi's like, I don't know about the math on this doesn't check out, you know, like, and then everyone's like, well, what does Einstein think? And like everyone looks at Einstein and he's like, I think it works out. And then he just like just relief across like, Einstein said it was cool, we're gold. You know, like,
right.
But it was just like a weird, like, you know, historical crossroads of like one meeting that Einstein was at, and Richard Feynman was like there. I don't know. It's such like a weird, like history is such a weird thing, man. Like being a physics nerd as I am, you know, like seeing all the legends like converge in one spot. It's like watching like the band's Last Waltz or something, where you have like every musician that you know of in the world is on stage at the same time or something like that. Like,
right.
And then Prince takes the solo, you know?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's like, well, no one knew about Prince yet, but like they knew about him after this, you know, or something. That wasn't the exact concert, but you know, but I don't know. Ballpark. I don't know. There's a lot of cool things that I think that could happen in a relatively short amount of time here.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot, like, there's no shortage of money for research. There's no sort of shortage of, like, you know, super smart kids with, like, an infinite amount of Red Bulls, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as, like, I'm always focused on the energy side of things, you know. And obviously there's a whole nother camp that's focused on the artificial intelligence side, and there's a whole nother camp that's focused on the quantum computer side.
I think that the artificial intelligence community, I guess you would call it, is going to have a huge part in how we use energy in the future.
Optimization.
You know?
I mean, straight up machine learning algorithms to like test all the boundaries of it, like in simulations and and then using quantum computers after that to calculate the huge calculations that would take really like any computer like thousands of years. It'll take a quantum computer like a couple weeks, you know, like.
That's crazy. Yeah, I know almost nothing about quantum computing.
Yeah.
It's something to do with quarks, right?
Yeah, in a sense, right? Yeah. Instead of it being like a binary system of zeros and ones, they have like, I think it's a system of 6.
Oh.
So
you can crunch a lot more information and
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like exponentially like faster. And, you know, supposedly they have the ability to run them at room temperature now, which is, I mean, like, you know, like...
You can't run your laptop at room temperature, like, you know?
Right, yeah, maybe they're stretching on that claim, you know, I don't know.
Oh, there's probably a lot of HVAC going on in that computer room, though.
Jesus. Well, I mean, they were putting them like in giant refrigerator units, you know? Trying to get them to absolute zero temperature if possible, like 99.9% of absolute zero. is what they were hitting at least in the original.
That's so impossible, like
Yeah.
so impossibly hard to accomplish. I can't imagine
Yeah.
what kind of process they're using.
I mean,
It's
they're
not
using
like
straight lasers, essentially,
Okay.
to drop temperature directly.
weird.
Yeah, yeah.
So weird. Freaking lasers.
That's what they did with the experiments in the 90s with the Bose-Einstein condensate. It's like the fifth state of matter that's at absolute zero temperature. I'm completely enamored by that type of thing, though.
Well,
man.
how do you void a material of all of its energy?
Exactly. You know what happens to material at that level? Is that it loses its identity. All the atoms lose their
what
ability.
Am I?
Yeah.
Like an identity crisis.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
They
'cause
operate as if they're one atom at that
it's
point.
just matter. It's
Yeah.
like not any one thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that would make sense because you don't have
Any energy left in the
Yeah.
atoms anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
So then you got to think about like the entire foundation of the universe, right? Like, it's all like built on this fabric of this foundation, and if you dropped all of the energy out of the entire universe, it would essentially act as like one being, right?
I guess, yeah.
I
If
mean-
that theory holds true, then yes.
Yeah,
Everything
yeah.
would just kind of become.
And that's
Itself.
that's the thing
Yeah.
that like keeps me awake at night.
I'm just thinking about a little old lady down the street whose furnace I couldn't fix. And you're like,
What is the
What is-
foundational
yeah.
divine ground of all being? You know, like what is it?
and I'm like, Mrs. Burns is hot sleeping in her room tonight because I couldn't get her motor today.
Yeah, it's actually 88 degrees, but she thinks it's cold. You know, she's gonna think that.
Yeah.
But hell, I thought that myself until you
Right.
told me that. You know, like that's. It's a weird world, man. There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, and it's easy to get tunnel vision on one specific thing.
Yeah, because you can really only focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah.
As limited human beings as we are, you know, like it's.
That's part of what's so hard about what I do.
Yeah.
Because I need to be able to do electrical wiring.
Yeah.
I need to be able to handle refrigerants. I need to be able to do plumbing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do gas line and PVC plumbing all day.
Yeah.
Not all day, not me personally, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I have to know a decent amount of what I'm doing in a bunch of different fields.
In order just to even look it up, right? I mean,
right,
like,
How do you know what you don't know?
Yeah. And I've always tried to break things into its component parts as far as like, I've always said that like all work, all jobs that we do is basically just taking, one thing from point A and taking it to point B. Whether it be, like I have to know this part of the information here to apply it to this, and then I have to take this and turn it this way. It's
Right.
like all just like here to here to here to here. It's like nonstop. That's what, to me, that's all jobs, and that's how I like approach learning, and that's how I approach work, and because that way I don't get overwhelmed by it, essentially.
Yeah.
I
I make lists.
Yeah, for sure.
If I'm like starting my day looking at a project thinking, oh my God, there's so much to do here.
Yeah.
Write it
it's
down,
just-
check it off as you go, and
Yeah.
it's satisfying. You're like, oh, I'm done with that thing. I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Because otherwise you'll just fall into the doom scroll.
Yes. Yeah, the evil tiki-takis.
Yeah, for sure.
No, really, I mean, I feel like it's taken over my brain to a certain degree.
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
wild, and
And
I want to detach from my phone
Yeah.
completely. Really, I would love to do that, but due to my work, I can't. All of my scheduling is through my phone.
Yeah.
Calling customers, looking up model numbers and manuals, and it's just not possible.
It wouldn't be so bad if like they weren't built to be addictive.
Right.
And also like if the data that they were stealing from us we were paid for.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
like that
Pay
would
for
be,
my phone bill, and
Yeah.
sure, you can have my information.
Or if it was more like MySpace and I could just go in and change the HTML of my page
Yeah.
and just turn it into whatever I want. That would also be really cool, just for the record. since we're talking to a microphone like now, I love just like putting the ideas just back to back to back.
MySpace, if you're listening.
Yes. Yeah. Just come back strong and just take over.
Yeah.
We are here for you. Like I really liked having a music player on my page.
Yep.
You know, how cool was that? You know.
But then you have multiple pages open, and you're like, which one's playing the music that I want to... Yeah.
I mean, that's always been... But now our browsers are so amazing. Like, one thing I really like to do, sometimes, I get into phases where I'll, like, put more than one music on at the same time, just to, like, cross them on purpose in different ways. Because some music just goes well together, and it creates, like, an entirely different form of music to me.
I'm sure. Yeah, I agree. But my mind, because I started off musically playing the trumpet in middle school, and then I switched to playing the baritone, and then I taught myself how to play guitar.
Yeah.
So once I learned how to play guitar, I was always listening for the parts that I thought I could try to play. And then I started playing bass, and then I started playing the drums.
Yeah.
So when I listen to music anymore, I'm thinking about how would I play that thing that the person that I'm hearing is doing.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine trying to do that with two clashing tempos, keys.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
I don't...
Yeah. And music serves many functions.
Right.
I think. And, like, as a musician, right, like, I will do that same thing where I'm, like, you know, the diagnostic, looking in there like, oh, well, I see what you're doing here, and I know that that's in the Yamaha DX7. It sounds like that. And then he went to the strings, and then when that happened on the screen, hit the flute, and then he did kind of a cross thing, you know, like just completely taking things apart. But that also, if you're only listening to traditional music, like I find that I do that more often. But if I have two different conflicting musics on simultaneously, it's harder for me to get into that mode, you know? And it's like it's like a more pure, just like sound expressions in a sense. Okay. You know?
I kind of know what you're talking about to a certain degree because I like to play video games.
Right.
And I have a little steering wheel and some pedals. And I play Dirt Rally 2.0. It's like a rally racing game.
Yeah.
And in the background on my Xbox, I'm playing drum and bass with no vocals. Just straight hi-hat, you know, long drawn-out bass notes. And it's interesting how it, like, helps me focus because there's something else going like trying to take my attention. Yeah. So I could see I could see the point you're you know,
like the applications of music are really interesting.
Yeah.
You know, like especially like you were saying like without words, you know, like if I'm sitting there like writing something or typing or whatever, you know, like it's so hard to get around the words.
Right.
You know,
you're
it's
listening
like
to a
going
song and you start typing the words that you hear in the song as you're typing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And like what I found too is that like some of the newer bands work really well with this. Like when I was typing this big project I was working on a few years ago, I was listening to a ton of Ty Segall and Black Moth Super Rainbow. Because
I've heard of them, not familiar though.
And they both have words technically, right?
But it's so fuzzed and reverbed out that it's just like an instrument at that point.
Exactly. Okay. And that's why that worked for me.
Right.
And then with Black Moth, it was more like he was always using a vocoder on his voice, so it was real undecipherable. So they both used vocals in that kind of texture. You know, instrument type of a way. Which, in a sense, it feels like a lot of the newer bands are going in that direction. I think largely because a lot of the main tags have just been taken by old classic rock songs. And they're still here. Yeah. You know, like they never went anywhere and we all know them. Yeah. So how do you rewrite the best tag in the world?
You just don't.
Maybe you just don't. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And to the point where, like, Segall, man, the way he writes lyrics is just, like, super baseline stuff, you know?
Most of it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Sometimes it's real kind of... sometimes it's just, like, yeah, you know? Like, one of them I really grabbed onto. God, what was it? It was something about. It's been a while since I've listened to him actually. On Goodbye Bread, right?
Okay.
He has a song. I think it's on either Goodbye Bread or Melted, but it's on Melted. She Wants a Couch or whatever. That whole song where like I think is it he had the one surf rock song where he's like, I got a girlfriend.
Oh yeah.
She says she likes me or something like that. And it's just like the happiest song in the world kind of thing. And then I don't know if it was the same song, but it was like, she wants me to buy her a couch. I said I'll buy her a couch. And then,
okay, cool,
yeah,
dude.
Yeah. But like the emotion behind that, I get
right.
full on,
Yeah.
or like she wants a house. I want her to have a house. Like, wow, there's something really primal about like the whole expression of that.
Like you want her to have that house.
Yeah,
but...
yeah, exactly. But there's like the world is like stopping you, and you have to like conquer the world to get to the point where you can have like this simple one thing,
Just build her a tiny house instead.
And that's the goal of this podcast, really, is full circle. Come back around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude.
So HCFCs.
Yes.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah. Chemistries.
Yeah. That went off the rails real quick, but it's fine. I expected as much.
That's how I run my podcast. I'm very laser focused on everything that we do.
I can tell. It's good. It's good. Yeah.
Yo. They're gonna say
I spent all this time looking through my old school book, just trying to find some information, and I read like 3 lines of it. Oh, fun fact.
Okay.
First refrigerant used.
Okay.
1929.
Huh. That wasn't that long ago.
R717, commonly known as ammonia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which has killed a lot of people servicing them, because you open a reach-in cooler and you go, oh, what's this look like?
Oh, damn.
Gunk. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. We don't use ammonia anymore.
I bet not.
It's very bad for the ozone.
Yeah.
But other fun fact is R718
Okay.
is water.
Oh.
Water has its own denomination for refrigeration.
Nice.
So
Nice.
you would be using a mixture of
R718 and antifreeze.
Yeah. That's your refrigerant. I'm sure
That's
antifreeze, that whatever antifreeze you have, if you look up what it's actually made up of, I'm sure you could find what refrigerant blend it actually is.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, antifreeze or coolant is essentially a refrigerant. You're taking heat away from the engine and blowing air across a radiator, which is why you're using radiators for your your comfort air.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
I wouldn't call it air conditioning because you're not necessarily going to be dehumidifying at 55 degrees most likely.
Right.
You want about a 40-degree coil for condensation to start building.
Okay.
But
okay. Gotcha.
Full circle, baby.
Right.
Full circle. I should say full loop, because there's a glycol loop in the ground.
Just Got to get the puns precise. That's what this show's all about. Precision.
Yep.
Alignment and quality care.
Yeah. Pet boys. That's what...
Chalk that one up. That's a win. That's a W.
Yeah. So, DIY geothermal.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Success.
I hope you do it.
Yeah.
I would love to be involved in you doing it.
That'd be rad. Yeah.
Is it going to be the best way to cool your tiny home?
Maybe we'll have a follow-up to...
We'll have a follow-up.
Tune
in next week. Just kidding. Tune in next year and find out.
About a year from now,
Yeah.
we'll know all the hard and fast facts.
We could do like a small scale trial using like a computer fan.
Yeah.
I'm talking like shoebox sized,
Right. And
Put
depending on like how cheap I can get like a radiator, or if I can just find a radiator
go to a junkyard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you know,
and say, how much is this?
Yeah, definitely.
$15.
Yeah.
Perfect.
One that's like
6 more of those, you know, and then you stick them together.
Stack them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
most efficient way. Okay, so now we're thinking.
Yeah.
Most evaporators are either in a V, like an N kind of shape.
Oh, okay.
Or like an A.
Yeah.
So typically in like a residential setting, it's called an A coil. That's what we call it because it's like this.
Yeah.
And it's normally in like a case, right?
Okay.
So the air is forced to go through this.
Yeah.
The fins of the coil. So
right.
In your application, I'm almost picturing like a fan on the outside of the house.
Yeah.
With a small plenum or like a a metal box.
Yeah.
With your radiators in there.
Yeah.
Angled, so they're like this, alternating.
Okay. Yeah.
And then a small ductwork system, maybe.
Yeah.
Why not? It depends on if your fan is moving enough air.
Right.
How big the ducts are.
Yeah.
That's all math that you would have to figure out. CFMs, cubic feet per minute, and all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. That's fun stuff. I haven't gotten into like sizing units for making sales and that kind of thing.
Right.
Because that's a big part of it is
Gotcha.
properly sizing your air conditioner for the house.
Yeah.
But in this application, wing it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it'd be super cool if we could throw something together, using your
I'm all about
general knowledge and my somewhat more specific knowledge.
Yeah. Because I'm all about eyeballing things, man.
Right.
Even when I'm out back here in the shop, I've done this for years to Dad. He's just like, all right, he has tape measure out, he's getting everything. I'm like, yeah, but it's just not going to fit. It just doesn't look like it's going to fit. Usually I'm right. I don't know. Yeah. It's like, about here center though, that's...
Yeah, it feels like... it always felt to me like when I would measure something and mark off the middle and I'd like tap it and drill it, I'm like, why does that look off center?
Yeah.
Every single time, no matter how hard you try.
Yeah.
Unless you're using like a drill press or whatever, it's always gonna look.
Yeah, I mean,
there's
definitely applications I use tape measures and yardsticks and some because you got to do things right when it counts sometimes,
Yeah. And working with metal isn't very forgiving as far as...
look how centered this thing is, man. I put that on the shirt myself.
It's pretty centered.
Pretty centered. Yeah.
I think it's a little bit...
It looks like it might be.
Maybe a little...
I made this for a music video, so I was just like,
good enough.
It's for myself.
Yeah.
I didn't really care that much, but it's still pretty centered.
No, it's cool.
Yeah. And I felt it fit the mood of the podcast as far as like green technology. It felt like there was like a little Christmas tree in there.
I didn't realize we were going to be doing video, so I wore my hoochie guy short shorts.
Right on.
These are what I wear to practice most practices because it's in a 110-degree attic.
That's not a fun space
it's not.
Play a lot of times. We could just come down here. It'd be easier for me, but not for everybody else.
Yeah, that is a haul. I mean, it's 45
wise.
minutes for me to get here from my house.
Yeah.
And Charlie's another 20 minutes east of me.
Oh,
so,
dang.
Yeah.
Charlie's
the guitar player.
No bueno. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. You have any...
As far as heating efficiently.
Yeah.
My favorite idea that I've had so far is using a solar panel to charge or to power an electric water heater.
Okay. Yeah.
With a pump on it.
Yeah.
That pumps the water through the floor, and then that's also your drinking water.
Yeah.
Or showering, whatever.
Right. Because you're already heating it anyway. Mm-hmm. Nice. So that's a good idea.
That could be your heating solution.
Yeah.
And the
I forgot about that. I remember learning a little bit about that once.
Well, you had mentioned
before you lay the concrete. You know?
Yeah. You had mentioned the heat pump water tank.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, why not just use water?
Yeah.
Right? But the problem is, how cold is that block gonna get? How much electricity is your electric water heater
yeah,
going to
that's
be using?
true.
Because
That's
it's
true.
literally just like a toaster coil.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's just heating an element.
Well, what you could do too is just like make a valve and turn it on and off, like depending on the situation.
Oh yeah, yeah. Tankless water heaters.
If you want to get your floor warmer, you know, just turn it
Yeah.
on and go for it.
Yeah, it could just be. Yeah, you're right. It could just
And
be
then if
valved.
you really want hot water at your shower, just turn it on, turn that off because it won't ever get hot by the time it gets to the shower. Otherwise.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Definitely doable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely
for
doable.
sure.
Are you going to have running water at this? Or are you going to be collecting rainwater? Probably a combination?
That's
or...
a question that I
Yeah.
haven't addressed yet. I know that there's a well in the region there.
You could come up with some kind of filtration system
Yeah.
for your condensation if
Oh,
you're
yeah,
using an air conditioner at any point.
Yeah, because I
you're-
mean, like a dehumidifier type of situation, right? Like just
Exactly.
take the water right out of the air
And then you filter it.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Be
could use it
pretty
as
cool.
like gray water. you
Yeah,
know?
that's true too.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Just like, let me just pull this out of the air really quick and drink it. Yeah.
Have like an entire like solar dehumidifier water getter system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's completely doable. As far as I wonder how much you could actually get. I mean that's such an off-grid cool solution too, you know.
Oh, you know what? You could, if you had like a severely undercharged air conditioning system that was just like isolated, like, you know, it's old and dilapidated and leaky, so you throw a little refrigerant in it and run it.
Yeah, yeah.
And the condenser coil the evaporator gets completely frozen in a block of ice.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you're like, I have ice now. Like, that's...
Dang.
Yeah, there you go.
Have a little ice maker.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, we're just gonna like manipulate all the thermodynamics of Earth.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's basically, I mean, a case study, you know?
Yeah.
We're using the house as just like a study, essentially.
That's true, yeah.
And
Proving
that's
ground for good ideas and bad ideas.
Because, like, ultimately, if any of this stuff works well and I could do it cheap enough, I could install these things like geothermal in other people's houses for cheaper than what they're doing it, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Essentially.
I mean,
or for the same cost if I'm good at it. I don't know. Like, that would be a cool job to have.
Well, I mean, I guess it would be a very specific clientele because you would be the green option because you're using recycled materials and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, you're taking old radiators and repurposing them instead of them being smashed and thrown in a landfill.
But if we're experiencing heat waves and... You know what I mean? Like power grid failure, like that's going to become a really valuable occupation, I think.
Yeah. I've actually seen, so going way back earlier in the conversation to the metering device when we were talking poorly about how an air conditioning system works. It's easy to get mixed up when you're talking about all different terminologies. So a metering device is just a fixed orifice. You know, well, there's two different kinds, but I've seen people have success with like building mud houses and stuff using plastic bottles. Yeah. Where the outside edge is the larger edge is facing outside and the bottle cap is facing inside. And because of that restriction and the expansion factor, it can cool by like 10 degrees. Wow. Just making one wall on the house have like bottles built into the mud.
Usually using glass bottles like in earthships and things. Okay. I've seen that I've seen them do that in earthships. Mm-hmm. I always thought it was just like them putting glass bottles in a wall built like a brick wall, you know, as like a window. Well, as like sun coming in.
Okay, that's a good point.
But I never thought about it in that fashion. Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
Yeah, you're just increasing airspeed because it's being, you know what I mean?
You know what would be really funny too is like, and then when you wanted to like shut that wall off, you just like put the bottle caps.
Yeah, just put those caps back on. You just have a bag of them hanging next to That's, I mean...
It's like, I gotta close the window, you know?
This is 99 bottles of beer. Oh, wait.
That's when I'll start just having kids so I can have them.
Free labor.
Actually, kids are cool. You know, like I didn't...
No, kids are pretty cool. My 7-year-old just started 2nd grade today.
Wow, awesome.
Fucking grade.
Hell yeah.
It's crazy. Sorry.
Yeah.
Went this whole podcast without
Right,
swearing, and now I'm talking about my daughter dropping F-bombs. But no,
I publish this as explicit anyway. So like yeah. On Spotify and all the other ones, they ask you. So I always swear just because
just
I'm
to
paying
cover
for
your
it.
bases.
Yeah.
Definitely understandable, but
I already signed up for the deal.
Yeah. It's pretty.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. That's wild.
It's weird, man.
I bet.
I would like to have a sit down conversation with you just about, personal life stuff. Like I shouldn't say personal, but like your upbringing and my upbringing and how we became the people that we are now.
Yeah, that's a whole conversation. Yeah, for sure.
That'd be a long one. Yeah.
I mean, it's the conversation. Everybody has one, though,
Right.
And it's we all talk about how everyone needs therapy now, in a sense, and it's
like, or you could just talk to people,
right?
Yeah,
exactly,
because that's what therapy is. Just
exactly
talking about how you're feeling,
and therapy is a little bit more than that too. I did look up some YouTube videos the other day because that's what I thought, and I was like, well, what are they even gonna say?
Right.
Yeah. And like I watched a 15-minute video that said
how
like
to be a therapist.
Yeah. Where they put down.
I was joking, but.
Well, not technically how to be a therapist, but like
the theory behind.
This is therapy about trauma, and like they're like drawing these representations of like your mood or your like well-being or something, and like they represent it as like a cycle, as a wave, and then they're like, these are the boundaries of normal, and then when you go above that, that's when shit gets real wild. Or then if you get real low, then you're super depressed. And then they said that like over time you become numb to the world and your boundaries actually increase so that you're more used to.
Interesting. Yeah. You
and
adjust to your inputs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And once they said that, like it clicked with me. I'm like, wow, that's completely true.
Yeah.
like
that's not normal. Whatever the thing is. But outside of that boundary,
that made me think that therapy is actually something worthwhile. Because I'm definitely skeptical.
I was going to therapy every 2 weeks for about a year and a half while I was living in Florida.
Wow.
And I was away from, all of my family here in Ohio, including my daughter, and that's a whole other story. I won't get into that, but I really, really benefited from seeing a therapist. So, if anybody listening is debating on it, including me, I've been meaning to get back and finding someone that I can talk to. So
I've been thinking about it too. That's why I looked up that video.
It's definitely worth the trouble of opening up. It's hard. But,
for sure. I mean, that's essentially what I've tried to self-administer through writing songs for the last 20 years.
Sure.
I've written about an album every year for 20 years.
That's crazy.
And some like this year I haven't really written one verbally. Like using lyrics so much. But I did write an entire like synth rock album, essentially, since January. And now I get to perform it on Sunday night.
Nice.
For the first time, really. We're gonna have a barbecue out here for Jubilee Go fundraiser.
Oh, okay.
We got Mind Canaries coming in. Cassie Finneran's gonna sing. Couple other bands, maybe, if they got back to me during this podcast. I don't know right now.
Right.
But that's gonna be fun. I've been going through the set every night. I went through it twice last night. Just like got the drum machine. I finally figured out how to hook my bass synth to this like sequencer. So now I just hit the button and the thing's just playing by itself. Cool. And like, it's so rad. Like it's. Like, I've just got all these synths, like, within the year as well. Right. So it's, like, not only am I writing it, but I'm just, like... I'm writing it, essentially, just to figure out the equipment.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's a whole challenge on its own. I haven't been serious about playing music for a long time, up until Slow Mono, which was, what, a year and a half ago now? A little over
probably.
A year and a half? Yeah, I think we started in, like...
And that's
December, January of.
And that's a serious band. The way that it's presented is serious.
Yeah. I won't get into that. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But I mean, I appreciated the perspective on bands because of that band too. It's such a cool lens.
So this is second hand for me.
Okay.
So third hand, fourth hand, whatever.
Yeah.
From my understanding, people were impressed that at the first show we played here, that we could get you to do the thing that we did. Like with it being as structured as it was, which isn't surprising to me now that I know you a little better. You know, it's the lack of structure, I feel, is kind of where you thrive.
Right. Yeah,
so
for sure.
being that not constrained, because it's not like, you know, John doesn't rule with an iron fist when it comes to playing certain things, but
on that very last song, it has evolved over time.
Yeah.
And it's I really love playing that because like I can just do whatever I want, but I know what I do every time essentially, and everyone kind of knows what I do every time now. You know, but it's definitely sometimes I'll hang on this note a little longer, like I did at the Winchester the other night. I was like, man, I'm holding this way longer than I normally do. And it's like I always wanted to do this, you know. Like, But that whole like super structured mentality,
technical.
It like allowed me to dial in that far, you know, on that one note, just to know what I'm doing every time, and that's something that it's if as long as I have that structure already in place and I don't have to do that, I mean, I've done it before in other bands. Yeah. I can't say I've never done that because back with the old Underground Airplane, that's how I wrote everything. Was just, I had like, and that was partially because of the drummer too. Because once I taught the drummer that song, it was in stone. It never changed after that point.
Okay, right.
We wrote that song together at that point, and then that's the song. Which, there's a lot to say about that. You know, like in a previous band of mine, I was
always
trying
changing.
to rewrite songs,
right.
and it just kind of disintegrated the band. And I think that was one of the main reasons why that happened.
I think the best kind of middle ground is when you like introduce a riff, not even a song, but a riff to your bandmates, and then you have 5, 6, 7, 8 riffs.
Inputs.
Yeah. Well, yes, you get feedback, and then you end up just having a bunch of riffs, and you're like, okay, well, this one works with this one. Let's put those together because we both already know those riffs.
Right.
That's mostly how Scum Guppies was written. The punk band I was in.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the years. I think it was like 2018.
Okay. Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. That's probably the most fun I've had playing music in a long time. Not that Slow Mono isn't fun, but it's a different. I mean, Slow Mono isn't a punk band.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. Playing bass in that too. That's going back to the structure thing. That's what's so difficult to me about playing the drums. Is like I'm supposed to be the backbone of everything. So it makes me really reluctant to stray from like the backbeat, like the 2s and 4s, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, or 1s and 3s, whichever. I'm technically a trained musician, but this was many moons ago since I've even looked at like a sheet of music or anything like that. Yeah. So it's all just very as it comes, you know.
I always find it interesting that like how deconstruction of music happens like this too, where we're essentially constructing a thing,
right?
You know,
you're stacking this on top of that, and then this supports these things, and then
it's like we're building a house essentially every time. And how much space does it have in it? How much, is it just a solid block?
Why does this room feel so big?
Yeah. So many elements go in to that type of thing. I'm just relating it to what we've already talked about because it's the same type of mindset, I think, you know? And I think that's, I've been teaching piano lessons here, and it's interesting because, like, I've never taught before a couple years ago, and it's like, so, like, learning how to teach somebody how to play music is, I'll like
It's
it makes
self-reflective.
me, yeah,
right?
definitely,
Yeah.
the whole teaching process is making me a lot better at piano than I used to be too.
That is very true in most things. I think if you're teaching somebody what you know, you're learning more about what you didn't know you knew.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
how it was for me in school, because I went in with a very base level knowledge of low voltage wiring and just general hand tools and stuff like that. So when I was like explaining how amp draw works to somebody, I'm like teaching them from the ground up without any information, with all the information in the world, really, but like where do you start with that?
Yeah.
So
the analogy of the hose, maybe.
yeah.
I mean, like, and then but you're in charge of those analogies and how you represent the examples, and like that's so wide. It's such a wide field of options, really. Like you could tell this guy anything, like because he has no idea or no ground of reference, or
So the example I'm thinking of specifically, it was a woman in my first quarter of school.
Okay.
She had absolutely no experience in anything mechanical.
Yeah.
She was not a mechanically inclined person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are you here? But more power to you, by all means. But are you actually interested in doing this? Turns out she wasn't. She dropped out after the second quarter.
Yeah.
But I was explaining to her how amp draw works, and like I had a leg 1 and a neutral.
Okay.
And I put my amp clamp on it and said, see how it says 2 amps?
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's going this way to the light bulb.
Right.
That's using electricity.
Yeah.
I put it on the other one.
Yeah.
It's going that way. So now if I put it on both, they're going to cancel out. And it's 0 amps. Yeah. But really it's, I don't know. Electricity is a whole other thing.
It's a dark,
Ohm's law is I understand the concept.
Yeah. How
I couldn't do it for
equation.
You on paper though.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head. But
it's a dark arts. Same with
that was my initial take when I first started understanding how refrigeration works, where you're literally changing states of matter, changing states of matter in order to change temperature
and pressure and all of these things. Yeah.
I was like, this is alchemy. This is literally like alchemy.
Most people are just like, well, the refrigerator's cold.
Yes, it's cold in the box and it's warm in the back.
Yeah.
That is actually like most of it.
That is really, yeah.
Yeah, but
that's what we should stress the most on this program right now is that the refrigerator is cold inside and it's warm in the back.
Well, and
once you get your mind wrapped around that box,
yes, that box could be your house.
90% of the whole thing.
That box could be a walk-in cooler.
That box could be your house. That is an important point. Because that is exactly what's happening when you're putting... Yeah. That is such a clear representation to me now. Like...
You're just removing the heat from a space and putting it somewhere else. Yeah. It's like that meme from SpongeBob of Patrick saying, "Why don't we take it and put it somewhere else?" That's yeah. I'm sure I botched it, but you know the one I'm referring to, maybe.
It's about radioactive waste, right?
I think they're moving the city from a giant worm.
I was being facetious, but yeah. Okay, yeah, I might have seen that. I've seen a lot of SpongeBob in my day, for sure.
It's not as good going back. The first season holds up a little bit. Yeah. After that, it's all downhill.
I was talking about the Goonies, because I never got, like, a real good watch of the Goonies as a kid. Mm-hmm. So I tried to watch it a few years ago. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so when I watched
I've definitely seen it front to back, but never in one sitting.
It's good for nostalgia, I'm sure, but like watching it as an adult, you're just like, this isn't a really great movie.
I was on Disney Plus with my daughter, looking for something new for her to watch, because I've been trying to go back to like the movies from my childhood and the generation before me,
for sure,
and just to kind of broaden her like movie knowledge. It's all Disney, Anyway, I put on the original
different eras of Disney had different philosophies too.
The original animated Peter Pan.
Okay, yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah?
The amount of the thing that bothered me the most
misogyny,
was the misogyny, the dismissal of women and representation of like Native Americans And
I mean,
I was whoa, this is rough. I literally said, hey, kiddo, let's watch something else. Because I was like, I don't need you to be, it's just not necessary, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, at least frame it as a historical context.
And it's interesting you say that, because the first, it's a black screen with white text saying, this movie contains, upsetting content to people. Yeah. It's a whole thing saying, we left the original version alone because we want it to stand as an example of what not to do.
We've changed.
Which is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But,
and that movie was made in, the 60s, probably.
Probably.
I know Robin Hood was in the late 60s, and I think it was somewhere around there. But it's amazing even watching stuff from early 2000s.
Yes.
It's changed at light speed over the last 20 years.
Exponentially. Yeah.
I mean, just going back and watching it, it's just straight cringe, and you're just that's what, they got away with that?
That's okay.
Yeah, that was okay then, I guess. Weird.
Yeah.
But it's super weird, and I guess it's no surprise that we're seeing a lot of pushback now, because it happened so quick.
It was very
people
fast.
Don't change that quick.
Yeah.
And but we are, and so now it's okay, social upheaval again,
Yeah, I think that the disconnect. We're gonna get political here,
right?
Speaking of
for sure,
change and all of that, but just the disconnect from politicians and everyday people.
Yeah.
The average person, the average age of a person in government is, I'm sure, significantly higher than the average age of an American citizen.
Oh yeah,
right?
Definitely.
So how is that a representation of the people that are currently in the country?
On any representation of an average person. Yeah. Across the board, it's ridiculous for sure. I rewatched Irresistible last night. Have you ever seen that?
Is that a series?
John Stewart directed a movie.
Okay.
And it's about a political race of a mayorship in a town in Wisconsin.
Okay.
And it got super political and outside the realms of reality, and they're just raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not I think they said 45 million. And what was perfect, and I'm going to give away the ending because it was such an amazing idea, not just for a movie but for a township, right? Where Mackenzie Davis, one of my favorite actresses, her character is I came up with this idea where our town needed some money, so I took some video of my dad, who looks like a Republican, but he's saying Democrat things. And then we had a plant, an intern from our town, was working in the Democratic establishment, and said, hey, I found this video online, it's going viral, of this guy. He looks Republican, but he's Democrat. And then so everyone went there and just threw all this money in on this race, and the town played the establishment just to get money for the town. So
they were actually Republican, though. They were saying Democratic
the
things,
town just decided it didn't care.
Right, yeah, we just need money.
Yes, and just used the political establishment, a money-making system, to raise money for the town. I'm just God damn, that's cool. I love the whole energy of that, because it's just...
It's kind of punk. When you think about it, that's
anarchy, in a sense. Yeah. It's a complete reworking or gaming of the system, and the system is usually gaming us, with all of these ads that are bombarding us, $45 million worth of ads, or $2 billion to get the presidency worth of ads. It's
yeah,
it's a ridiculous amount of money that could be spent way better than what we're spending. I think political ads should be completely outlawed. I don't think they should even I think pharmaceutical ads should be outlawed.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with that.
Yeah.
Political ads, at least on broadcast television and radio and stuff like that, I'd be okay with it going away.
Yeah.
Because it would, that's a huge portion of their budget, I'm sure.
And not to mention that, but that's one of the main ways that corporations can buy a politician.
Right.
is through giving them money for ads and super PACs and all of these other things. And it's like, yeah, like that used to be illegal before. Like we were talking about Citizens United in 2010. And then after that point, I mean, corporations are considered people, and money is considered free speech. And now it's like, hey, we've been in a downward spiral ever since. It only took 6 years for everything to unravel. And everybody saw it happen in real time. Yeah. I mean, everyone blamed the internet, but
tweet by tweet, you know.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It's quite the spectacle. Yeah. It's still pretty entertaining.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm neither left or right. I'm down. Yeah. I'm like, get away from me. Like, don't just leave me alone.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Because I mean, in some sense, everything is political. In some sense, nothing is political. Depends on how you look at it.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of how do we get a bunch of people to figure out how to be peaceful near each other in a space. You know?
It's interesting that it seems like there is such a divide when really I feel like it's a lack of information. But people are being misinformed.
Yeah. Oh.
At an exponential rate. Yeah. You know, this has never happened before, where people are getting all of this false information as consistently as they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, like, the average person doesn't care if you vote red or blue. No, I mean, they might care a little bit, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to be around you.
Yeah.
You know, or
because I mean, what percentage of the population even like votes on a normal basis?
What is it, like 60%? Not even.
I think it's citizens? Like 40%.
Really? That's absurd. To me, that's like okay. So,
Yeah. So I mean, like,
I'm not
that's how many people care for real.
I can't say that I'm like a patriot. Right. I'm proud to be an American, you know?
Right. I mean, there's cool things about it. For sure.
But at the same time, it's like in my mind, your one job as a citizen of this social experiment that we're in is to voice your opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, this is turning into a go vote, go get registered to vote podcast.
I'm completely down with that. I mean, like,
it's just silly to me that people wouldn't use their power, because that's where the power comes from in this social experiment.
Definitely.
It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, as a citizen of the United States, what does that even mean? And a lot of people have lost faith that their voice means anything, and that's where the disconnect is.
Well, if 9 out of 10 people voted, it would probably be a lot more accurate.
It would be greater if that happens.
Yeah. Instead of 4 out of 10, I can't believe that.
Yeah.
But
on baseline issues, like if the population, if like let's say 80% of the population believes something should be passed in Congress, regardless of our voice.
Yeah.
There's like a 25% chance that it's going to pass baseline. Across, whether nobody wants it or whether everybody wants it, it's still the same.
Right.
But if you have a bunch of money, like, that graph changes drastically. And so I think that people just see that, and like everyone feels that.
Well, I'm powerless.
And they just feel completely disconnected from the system. It's like there's like a parallel
and to a certain degree you are.
Yeah, definitely.
But it all starts with like a culture. It has to start somewhere, and I think that place is culture, and like being, self-reliant, which goes back to DIY HVAC.
Right.
Learn how to take care of yourself.
And punk rock, really.
And punk rock, right. Listen to punk rock, grow a garden, buy some radiators.
Be your own society, you know? Like,
and it's interesting, like, because you were reading that book at the last show. And what was it called?
It's Fully Automated Luxury Communism.
Okay, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, like, real world application, communism is bad.
Right.
but like on a small scale,
Right.
that's pretty close to how human beings function.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
oh, I have these beans. You have wheat. Let's trade.
Exactly. Yeah.
My time is worth this much, and yours is worth. That's more capitalism. I guess that's the difference.
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
Once you start holding more stuff than the other person, it becomes value.
If the one guy is turning around and selling those beans for like an insane profit, then it's like, and then things get weird. But like, but essentially we're doing a communism right now where it's like, hey, you have this information about this thing that I need to know about.
Yeah.
You want to come over and talk about it? As almost like a consultant in a sense.
The problem is greed. It's, absolute power.
Yeah.
Corrupts absolutely.
Exactly.
Isn't that it?
That's exactly the phrase.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of problems. Besides that, too. I mean, the too big to fail.
Even just logistics. Oh, too big to fail.
I mean, there's socialism for the corporations, like mad handouts.
Right.
But then, like, if your small business fails, well, sorry, you got capitalism. Like, you're not part of
$1,200 from having to stay in your house for 3 months.
You're not part of the socialism club like the rich guys are.
Right. You're in the capitalist club.
Yeah.
Go back to work.
There are two societies happening parallel right now. Just so you know.
Yeah.
There really is. And that's the kind of hypocrisy that people get turned off by too.
It's like if the U.S. was a giant city, the outer ring and even the middle ring would be like 80%, 90% of the people.
Yeah.
And then that 10% in the middle is ruling everything.
Yeah.
Like every every post-apocalyptic movie you've ever seen where there's a society that reaches back up.
Just a minimal emergency like COVID, right? They had all those like personal protection loans things that they gave out to keep the
small businesses floating.
Keep the small businesses floating, but keep all the payrolls going.
Right, yeah.
I mean, we gave tons of money to businesses to keep the payrolls going. Even in, like, airports, we gave them billions of dollars. But they just laid off everybody because there wasn't any stipulation. Yeah, and they just put it all in the stock buybacks and got rich. I mean, like...
That's a good point. I never realized that.
I mean, it was one of the biggest, biggest wealth transfers in history, essentially. I mean, that was one of the biggest bills.
But the wrong way. It literally went the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, all that shit happens, and then they lambaste us for getting, like, a $600 check for years. Yeah. They're like, well, they still got their stimulus checks, so they don't want to work. It's like, fuck you, dude. Like, everyone spent that immediately on bills. Like... It was gone before it got here.
No, literally, it was already spent before you got it in the mail.
Yeah, for everybody. Like, for 90% of the population, it was already gone. Yeah. I mean, it was gone because they sent it to us because it was an emergency. There's get me going on all that stuff.
That was a scary time, man.
For sure.
Like, the weeks leading up to the lockdown, my personal anecdote was my mom was in Hawaii at the time.
That's wild.
And she was on, like, the second to last flight to leave the island.
Before flights got canceled and all that?
Yeah. So...
Damn.
She was like... I don't know how long this is going to happen for, the lockdowns and everything. Like, we don't know how long this is going to last. So go get a bunch of non-perishables.
Yeah,
so we did.
Exactly.
And the whole time, my heart was racing. I'm what's going to happen right now? Everybody, just the heightened level of, like, unease felt by everybody.
Definitely.
It was so strange. And I don't know if it'll ever be repeated. And unless there's like a total collapse of society, which it basically was. It was like, what are we gonna do?
It's in that graph of the trauma of that therapist, right? Yeah. Like we used to be at this normal, and then now our boundaries are like this, because we're more used to essential workers and like being fucked over in many numerous ways that. Not only just the stress of the situation, but our like response to it, was just so like all over the place. Like there was no like, oh, wear masks, don't wear masks, we don't really know, like, let's inject bleach, we're just, like, throwing darts at a board right now, we don't know what we're doing. Like, that was the feeling everybody had, you know. What's 5G
which
networks?
Is true, which is nobody knew what they were doing at first.
Do you remember that week that 5G, like, everyone was 5G? Like, it was like an entire like week where everyone was freaked out that like we were going to
give me cancer or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I mean, it might, but like we'll find out in like 30 years, I guess.
Yeah. If
like most things,
it is true that if you sit right next to a 5G antenna, it's gonna fuck you up.
Oh yeah.
You know, but like it does.
It's a wavelength traveling through your body,
like something like an ultra high frequency wavelength.
Right. Okay.
That like does real damage to people if you sit next to them. But yeah, it is dissipated.
It's an episode of South Park
by distance
where he like stands in front of a microwave.
Oh yeah.
For a very, I think it's
been a minute since I've seen it.
I think.
I've missed a few seasons.
God, I'm not up to date on South Park by any means, but just the image of somebody like putting their face against like a 5G tower.
Yeah.
You're like, I
to
got
get
cancer.
Superpowers.
Yeah.
I could see that being a comic book real quick.
Nice. Yeah. 5G boy.
Yeah. Why isn't that a thing yet? Sounds like a Game Boy system.
He can just talk to anybody with crystal clear reception.
Yeah.
Around the world.
Through their mind.
Yes.
Like, through their cell phone, actually. Right.
Like, it's like.
It's like
5G boy.
Look at your phone right now, and it just like starts texting like in real time.
Oh man.
Or like the
We're
whole
making
screen,
a comic book now.
The screen turns into like his mind space, and he's just like inventing a movie like on your screen.
Nice, yeah.
Like his dreams are coming to life.
Have you seen some of the AI paintings and artwork?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
I know.
So weird.
I do that on my phone sometime. I have like an app that makes AI 3D art or AI art just in general.
Yeah, you just put like a prompt word in.
Yeah.
So weird.
The AIs, even
aren't there some AIs that are actually like under the impression that they are a living being?
There's rumors.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't remember where I heard this.
Well, there's several different types of rumors based off of like there was that time that Google invented that computer that started like doing things that the scientists didn't know that it could do or didn't know how to do, you know?
Right, yeah.
And so they shut it down, and they were like talking to each other in a language they didn't understand.
Shit.
Yeah. That was pretty freaky.
Yikes.
Yo, I say we just program the robots to garden for us, man. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. What do they run on, though?
Solar, man. I don't know.
Probably.
Whatever. Yeah, photosynthesis jelly, man. You know.
They all have a tiny nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have. There's been experiments where like they've like actually plugged into plants and ran small voltages, like point something.
Oh, just using like the neural system.
Just using the plant itself.
Okay.
Like there's there's electricity in plants.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But you'd think they'd just be able to like scale up, and like genetically modify so the electricity goes up. There's probably tons of hurdles as far as like
that goes back to
materials.
It all being from the sun.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Like...
That's what I'm saying. Like probably once you get an electrical current in a plant stem, it's just gonna fry at some point. Like you'd have to like re-engineer
copper plants with
yeah. Just like so in just molecular structure of like one thing I found was really interesting is that like in chlorophyll, the main it's all like a hydrocarbon.
Dude, you gotta talk to Jordan. She's gonna go absolutely crazy. If you give her some prompts, like some conversational prompts about what she does and what you want to know.
Yeah.
Oh my God, she's gonna go nuts, dude.
Hell yeah.
Sorry, continue.
So I was recently studying the molecular structure of chlorophyll. And it's basically just all hydrocarbons up until the center of it. There's like what they call a functional group that is active in the thing that makes it chlorophyll, and it's just basically 4 nitrogens surrounding a magnesium in the center. And so that's like kind of like the center functional group that makes it that element. Now, hemoglobin in our blood is almost the identical molecule, except for in the center of its nitrogens is iron. And that's really, really cool parallels like that. I don't know. Like, I saw that the other day on like a meme that my friend posted, and like I was like, chlorophyll, fuck yeah, like you know, and immediately like looked it up to make sure that was actually real, you know, to fact check it, and it was, and it was just such a really cool symmetry in nature like that. I mean, no point to that really, other than the mathematical beauty of the systems, you know.
I've been really wanting to connect with nature more.
Yeah.
Like, just, I don't know, just getting outside. I'm outside all the time. I mean, you can tell I'm 2 different colors now.
Right,
like,
yeah.
I spend a lot of time on rooftops, not necessarily in the woods or like, you know.
Yeah.
And that would be nice to be able to
just walk around barefoot in the grass for a little while.
I feel like my feet would get tore up though.
Oh,
I have bad feet because I wear waterproof boots and there's no, and they're all cramped, and that's a whole other topic of like, are shoes necessary?
Right.
Really, no.
Yeah. It's just that we've made environment that is sharp, has sharp objects laying around.
Very hard surfaces.
Yeah.
That bones don't like to.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, even in nature, though, it sometimes sucks. Like, up at the reservoir, I used to run barefoot around the reservoir, and there's these goddamn trees that have these seeds that are just spiked, you know?
Oh, okay, yeah,
and you run under those trees, and it, like, no, you're just, like, you're immediately on the blacktop, because you're just like, this sucks really bad. Get a spike in the foot, you know?
Yikes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was out at the reservoir remembering that the other day. But yeah, it's, I mean, that's why we've worked so hard to destroy nature over the years, because nature can kill us, and it tries to.
That is a good point. Yeah.
I mean, let's not, there's no bones about this. Like, we actively tried to kill nature because
conquer nature.
Yeah, because nature was trying to kill us the whole time, you know? And it doesn't seem that way now, you know?
Yeah. And
so you got to give past humans a break in that sense.
Sure.
They were just like, hey, it would be way cooler if these things weren't trying to kill me all the time, you know?
Yeah. Let's domesticate them instead.
Yes. Yes. These are wolves, these are lions, let's make them smaller, and, like, we'll feed them a bone every once in a while so they don't eat our children, you know? Like, But yeah, I mean, there's if you look at it from the other way, like when humans landed on Australia for the first time, like
we were gonna say Earth. When humans landed on Earth, I was like, whoa,
whole different topic. Egypt, they had these black meteorite rocks. Right. Anyway,
heaven is actually a different planet. Or no, the Garden of Eden was actually a different planet.
It's Jupiter. Is it? That's where we go when we die. Actually.
Is that where the rings come from?
It's a big circle. It's a big secret. Don't tell anybody about this.
Okay.
I don't remember what I was talking about now. What was I talking about? That guy. Oh, when we landed on Australia for the first time, like all the large mammal species of the entire continent went extinct. In a matter of, I think, a few hundred years. Right. Like, we just killed everything. And then it was, or maybe it was like a couple thousand years, I think. Mm-hmm. And then when we hit the American continents, when we, supposedly crossed the land bridge, and like there's fossil records of humans going across all the way down to the tip of, it took us like 1,500 years to get to the very tip of America, South America. Mm-hmm. And like, the fossil record of all the large mammal species disappears as like we're a plague coming across. Wow. It's ridiculous to see that. And it's, I mean, it hurts your soul to think about it in those terms, but also like those things, we're trying to kill them too. Yeah. And also like, if I can kill this really big sucker, then that feeds us for a while, like in that sense, I completely get it, What's
your take on, so I'm into like firearms, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And I consider myself to be a libertarian. You know,
Cool.
like I was saying, I'm not left or right. I'm more down. Leave me alone. Let me do what I want.
Yeah, for sure.
What's in the gun community as far as YouTube goes? There's a lot of like there's a specific YouTube channel called Warrior Poet Society.
Okay.
And even just the name is like enough to have a conversation about. I was talking with my wife about this, how like the average man now is much less capable than one 100 years ago. You know,
mean, arguable in both directions,
yes,
I guess.
Yeah, intellectually, maybe now with all the information we have available and, you know, the amount of specialization in certain things.
I mean, a lot of that comes down to free will, in a sense, too, right?
That is true, too. Like, what are your options? Either kill this thing and eat it or die.
Right.
Or you could not kill something and just go to the grocery store and buy some chicken.
Exactly.
You know, I don't know. My point is, like...
It is an entirely different dynamic. I mean, my grandma talks about, like, her parents being like, hey, this is how you chop a chicken's head off. You need to know this. This is important. Yeah. You know, and just like... I've
never gutted a fish.
Right.
I don't know how, if I were to catch a fish in a survival situation, I'm like, what do I do now?
Exactly. I don't know either, man. I hate fishing. I've never really been hunting, and I've been fishing, but like, I really didn't enjoy myself. No. I was just, But yeah, as far as guns, I mean, it's a necessary evil. I
completely agree. I think if guns were never created, there would still be terrible things happening around the world.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it would just be done with whatever weapon.
Well,
but
guns exist,
and
they were invented, and they're here now, and you can't uninvent them. Yeah, essentially. Yeah. Whether we're doing our best to control mental illness in conjunction with it is obviously we're not. You know, like it's like the entire doors have been blown off the entire conversation of like who gets to have a gun and who doesn't, and because it's like, well, if we start making rules like that, then it's tyranny. It's like we spend $1 trillion a year on our military. Like, the amount of guns that is at the top of this pyramid that we're in, you know?
Registered guns.
Well...
There's like... that's a whole other topic.
That's true, too.
But...
at some point, it just becomes absurd. Yeah. The level of number of guns.
Well, I don't think it's so much the number of guns as it is the accessibility to them.
Right.
Well, I guess they do go. That does go hand in hand. You know, obviously, if there's more, it's going to be easier to get. Yeah. But, I don't know. I think it has a lot to do with culture. It's all, you know, people are idolizing people that do bad things with these inanimate objects, you know?
Yeah. And they get the collective psyche attention on them, and that feels good. I mean, we do that with the band. Yeah. You know what I mean? Everyone wants to do that, in a sense.
But, like you said, because they were invented, they exist.
Yeah,
you know, like there's now that it's a thing, that it will always and forever be a thing.
Yep.
And it is the great equalizer. Right, you know, in my eyes, it's like, why wouldn't you want to be able to protect yourself against somebody who has access to the same thing that you could get? Right. You know. Yeah. But some people view that as like a cynical outlook on the world. It's like, no, it's actually like self-preservation. Right. It's like I want to protect myself and people that I care about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
It's understandable. Like
I do like that Ohio managed to pass that constitutional carry.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody can just say, oh, I got a pistol, I could put it in my pants. Yeah. But there's going to be a lot of dummies out there that don't know how to do it safely. Yeah. And that's a whole other thing. It's like...
Yeah, like, why aren't we training people to use these things?
Well, yes. I don't think there should be...
They're definitely dangerous, let's say.
Like, why can you... The argument is always, why
no one can argue that they're not dangerous.
Yeah.
You know?
The argument I hear always is like, why can you go to a gun store and get a gun without a license, but you can't drive a vehicle without a license?
Well, because the NRA is lobbied for millions of years. Or millions of dollars.
I don't like the NRA.
No.
I don't. As a gun person, I don't like the NRA.
My question was like, how do insurance companies even allow guns to exist? You know, and apparently what it was is that the NRA lobbied for that to just not be part of the issue of what insurance companies have to deal with. It's like they completely separated guns and insurance with a law somehow, which
Weird.
blows my mind how that even operates. You know,
I know you can get like self-defense insurance. You can get concealed carry insurance.
But like on the gun itself, like
okay.
Like I'm the way that I'm thinking is like. If you like invent a toy, I'm thinking of like old 1970s Saturday Night Live to tangent real quick here, where they used to like Dan Aykroyd had this character where he was just like a grifter, and he's like, hey, we got these toys here. These are great. This is a whole bag of broken glass. Here, kid, you can use it to cut up your mom's couch and make art out of it or whatever you want to do. Doesn't matter. Like. All these different, like, obviously, like, unsafe toys, you know? Like, if you make an unsafe toy in America, like, the insurance companies will just shut you down, you know?
Yeah.
But if you have an object like a gun, then it's like the insurance companies are like, well, none of our business, we can't... Like, it's like, if you make a dangerous consumer good in America, you will be shut down.
Right.
But if you make a dangerous weapon, you're fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's... It seems like a double...
Weapons are inherently dangerous because they're used for violence.
Yes.
But having the capacity to commit violence is the difference between somebody who would get a gun and someone who wouldn't.
But that's like your question about cars, right? Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, if I built a car here and sold it to you...
Right.
And, like, the insurance companies, if it breaks down in the middle, like, the wheels fall off and you drive in and someone gets hurt, like, that's my fault. Like, who does the liability fall on at that point, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, in that same vein, if somebody, drove through a crowd of people with a box truck,
right,
like what happened a few years ago, I don't remember what the setting was exactly, but...
Oh, and that, I mean, that happened to a couple different people, actually.
Yeah.
There was the rally in Virginia, I think it was.
There were so many people hit with the rioting and whatnot during,
this was
the
in
George Floyd stuff.
Yeah, that happened then, and it also happened in, I think, Richmond, Virginia, or Charlottesville, right? That was the big one?
I couldn't tell you.
There was like a rally of neo-Nazis and things happening with remember the bamboo
the tiki torches.
Tiki torch guys.
Oh yeah,
someone got killed. Someone ran a car through a crowd there. And
but my point is, if somebody chooses to do that with a vehicle, does that mean that the manufacturer would be liable for the use of that?
No, obviously not.
Yeah, right.
But insurance companies are still liable in like life insurance, like
insurance in general is like in my eyes, like a corrupt thing.
It's a scheme.
It's a...
For sure. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. I'm just saying that's... With the law that we have and the lawyers that we have that just it's odd to me, like, in our society that's just so insurance and lawyer crazy, Yeah. How someone can even own a gun at all, like, without being just, like, ridiculously, like...
Vetted.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like...
vetted is a great word. Or even, like, have to go through any training or background or whatever, like...
Well, because, some fairly wise men for the time decided to write on a piece of paper that said, no touchy my guns.
Well, man, and then getting into the whole bag of worms with the Constitution itself.
We've had this conversation briefly before, where you think it should be rewritten every so many years.
Yeah. I mean, Jefferson said that.
Oh, really? Okay. I wasn't.
That's not my words. That's like every 20 years or something, because I don't know. I mean,
cultures change.
Lots of things change.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but the people being able to prevent a tyrannous government from creating, or not creating, but like committing terrible tragedies is part of what the country was founded on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like going back to having the capacity for violence, like being able to fight for what you believe in. I think that it is important for the citizenry to be able to have the ability to stand up to an oppressor,
right. Yeah.
And that's my main argument for, like,
It makes sense. I mean, like, to some extent, that probably provides some shelter. You know what I mean? From just like martial law, essentially.
Yeah. And I think, as of recently, we've been inching more and more towards like a police state, where I get nervous just seeing a cop driving behind me, and I'm like, I'm not even doing anything wrong, I'm sure that's a very relatable feeling for most people. It's like,
definitely,
am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to be, threatened with being put in a jail cell for not paying a fee because I was driving my car too fast?
I didn't have a certain sticker on my car or something, like...
This goes back to me being a libertarian. It's like, dude, leave me alone. Like, just get out of my life,
I lean more towards the anarchy side of things, too, where the government's just out of your life, too, where cooperatives and all of that.
Yeah.
But politics is such a mixed bag, and... Where do we come together? Like, obviously, everyone wants certain things. Like, we want a system of food that works. We want, some kind of security. We want some kind of ability for our kids to get educated. Like, everyone essentially wants the same types of things, I think. It's just, what are the strategies available to get there? And if we don't have the ability to experiment with social constructs, then we're just left doing the same thing over and over again, like ad nauseum, and it just seems like it just keeps getting worse. It just keeps tumbling,
devolving rather than evolving.
Yeah. It definitely feels like it's going in the wrong direction, whatever that means. But I think that is causing a lot of people to wake up and start talking about it, because like. Before, like in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, all through Obama's era, like, we didn't need to talk about politics.
Because there was the good speaking guy who took care of it.
Yeah.
Good speaker guy.
Even in Reagan's era, like, a lot of people didn't care,
Yeah.
Even though, there's so many numerous things I could name right now.
All I think of is the dead Kennedys.
Right. Like, how much the world changed after the Kennedys, or just the punk band?
Yes. You said Reagan.
Yeah.
That's what made me.
Yeah.
He always bitches about Reagan. It's funny.
Yeah, a lot of things change. You could name Milton Friedman just as easily, or Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
Like any of the
Nancy Pelosi.
She was there too.
Right. Yeah.
She's that old. She's just such a relic. It's just so convoluted. And, like, the Constitution itself is based off of the idea of slavery as well.
That is a very good point.
That's a big... if you're gonna rewrite the Constitution, number one would be to change that, and then change it so that women have the right to vote, Not that we didn't already do that in a sense, but, like, it's nice to have baseline foundations to build off of, Yeah. Even in, like, mathematics, like, people build foundations to build math on,
Yeah.
And there's a lot, you can rebuild foundations of math all the time. Like, it's not like you have to use whatever structure that already exists, Maybe you do to have someone else understand you mathematically in this society, but, like, in theoretical math, you can base it on anything, essentially. I know there was a guy named Bertrand Russell, who wrote like this 1,000-page book that said, how do we know that 2 + 2 = 4? Well, this
I've
is
heard of this.
Yeah, and it's all just based off of logic essentially. And there's only like one guy in the world who ever read that book, but he wanted to like establish what's actually going on here, which is commendable. Like he's mostly known for Russell's paradox, I think is what it's called, where it's like it talks about set theory, where you have like sets of objects or sets of numbers, and it basically says that a set of everything can't contain itself, and thereby it isn't everything. And that was the paradox.
I was gonna say that's pretty paradoxical.
Yeah.
That's
that was what he was a big.
Say that again. A set of everything.
Yeah.
Cannot contain itself.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Whenever I interview someone who like went to school for math, like theoretical side of it, I'll bring that up to sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, I know about set theory and all this because I read a comic book about Bertrand Russell once, actually. That's the only reason I know about that. But they provided this really good analogy of like, oh, there's like 5 barbers in a town and who's gonna cut the one barber's hair? I don't know. It was really dumb.
Is one barber just never gonna have their hair cut?
Yeah, exactly. It just keeps going around in a circle and everyone has long hair. I don't remember exactly what it was now, but yeah, I mean the world in itself, if we construct the world as far as what we know, it is really very paradoxical in a lot of different ways, And so how do you square those circles? Well, maybe you can't, we all have our own ideas, and that's what leaves it open to interpretation, and I don't think that no one's going to agree the same on everything, obviously, right. And to try to get to change people's ideas is nonsensical in that sense, because it's like, well, you're partially right, and wherever you're partially right is where I'm going to agree with you, and then we move on from there. And that's the only way a good argument, I think, works in politics. Or when you're like, obviously we're discussing politics on a grander scale than we ever have in our society because of social media, and like people have like a platform to talk on or a soapbox to talk on for the first time, and like
everybody has a soapbox. So does anybody have a soapbox?
Right.
If everybody does.
Right. Well, if you have enough money, you have a bigger soapbox.
Right. Yeah.
That's the way it works right now, currently.
Or you have 2. And then 3 and
right, yeah. So, and then there's levels of soapboxes where it's like, if you're the mayor of this town, it's not as big of a soapbox as if you're the governor of this state or whatever. And
all I can say is, put some fucking term limits on. Just term limits. Yes. That is it. That would literally solve like 80% of the problems that we have with our government right now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways to solve it, but the people in charge of solving it are also
even
the
if it was like 6 terms.
And
that's a long time.
Yeah, definitely. That's enough time to do what you wanted to do.
24 years, right?
If you had some idea that you got elected on, 6 years is enough time to get it done.
No, I'm saying 6 terms.
Oh, yeah.
24 years in government, that's enough time, I think.
Yeah.
So you start when you're 50.
Yeah,
and you're 74.
Right. Yeah. That's
kind of what we're dealing with now.
That's beyond enough time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I know.
Just some form of all right, you're done.
And that's the paradox of our corruption system, is that the guys who are in charge of changing that law
will never change it, because then they're out of a job.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't even say out of a job, because, most of their income doesn't actually come from their job.
And not to mention that, but once they retire, they can still stay there and lobby and, jump on, I'm
constant
CEO.
Revolving door of...
It's like, oh, who's the CEO of ExxonMobil today? Oh, it's the guy who just retired from the Senate. Wow, that's weird.
Huh. What's the salary like?
Oh, who's the guy in the White House? Oh, it's the old guy from the ExxonMobil company. Wow, it's
Oh man.
It's a mystery how all that's unfolding. Yeah. I mean, it's just so big, and like we live in this like eternal growth economy, you know.
Yeah.
And we live on a finite planet. I was like, so in that book we were talking about, right? I'm in a part of it now that's talking about what if we start expanding into asteroid mining, which I immediately was like, this is dumb, you know, like how are you even gonna? And then the guy presents the case, and I'm like, God damn,
sold,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And now I'm like, fuck, we need to get people to school, because we're gonna have scientists out here. We need scientists to say, hey, if we cause an explosion on an asteroid to make it a near Earth asteroid so that we can mine it easier, like, they need to know what they're doing so it doesn't become directly at Earth mining situation, you know?
I think we've talked about I think it's a Netflix movie called Look Up.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah.
Instant classic.
Really, really enjoyed that movie.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
I'm a big fan of all those people who made that movie too. Adam McKay and Dave Sirota wrote that movie.
Okay. I don't know either of them. But...
Adam McKay, he is famous for Step Brothers and Talladega Nights.
That actually translates pretty well now that I think about it.
Yeah.
That's, kind of the absurdity of the comedy. Yeah.
Once he got past those absurd comedies, he went into real dry comedy with like, oh god, he did a whole movie about the 2008 crash called The Big Short.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, same style as all of his later ones after that, really. He did Vice about Dick Cheney. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a movie buff. You'd have a great conversation with John about movies.
Okay.
John is very much into film.
Yeah, I have had some interesting conversations about that with him. Yeah, I'm a big Adam McKay fan. He has such smart, like, obviously he's absurd, but he has like such smart trajectories as well. He directed I don't know. He's done a lot of things anyway, right?
Oh, that was very warm.
But yeah, you can see it play out just even with the heat waves that happened in Europe this summer. You know, like the media was just so like blind. So even in England, you know, like you had it was a classic clip that aired that just was so dead on the money. Don't look up, you know?
Right.
And you're just like, oh God, this hurts. Like, how many more of these are going to happen before we just like realize that this is happening? Or is it just happening on purpose, you know? Like, because it was like the week of like the meteorologist is on there like, now people, we all gotta take warning. It's gonna get to be over 100, maybe 110 degrees outside. This has never happened in the history of our country before. None of us have air conditioning. We all need to take strong precaution because people will die. And then, like, it cuts back to the anchors. And there's like, oh, it's summertime. Don't get so dramatic about it.
Go take a swim. Drink some lemonade.
Yeah, that's exactly what the response was. And it was like, and then it cuts back. No. Do not listen to her. This is not summer weather.
Right.
This is extreme, will kill you weather. Right. You know, like, it was just so stark. Oh my God, the contrast.
Oh man.
Yeah. It's still happening even after that movie. It's at least that movie has given us a guide to see what we're looking for, you know.
So in 2025, the EPA will require a global warming potential of 750 rating or less.
What does that mean?
That means that 410A will be phased out.
Oh.
The current generation refrigerant. To go back, just to try to tie that back in.
Yeah. Okay.
I actually have a couple notes here just to make sure my facts are correct. So yeah, EPA requires new equipment to be installed with a maximum of 750 global warming potential. And I mentioned earlier that 410A has 2,088 for the global warming potential.
Way over the mark.
Yeah, so the new stuff is
way
less.
friendly.
Yeah, like between 5 and 8 5 and 750.
Yeah.
500 obviously is what I meant.
Nice.
But yeah. That's going to be a whole shit show in my industry for the transition from 410A to the new refrigerants.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was kind of an abrupt
Oh,
change,
that's fine. Yeah,
that's
good information.
Funny how like the hottest weather we've ever seen. By the way, where the EPA
break out the
is
swim
actually,
shorts because we're going. No, this is not that.
Yeah.
It was like, and they went back and forth like that too on that show,
right.
And it was like, wow.
Yikes.
But yeah, I mean, like, this is a great conversation. I mean, like, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah.
I didn't know how long you want to talk. I think the longest one I've ever done is about 3.5 hours. Is the longest I've ever gone.
I wonder where we're at now, time wise.
It feels like 2.5 hours.
That's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah.
My ass is hurting from this chair. That's why I'm so shifty.
Cool.
I don't mean to be like.
Yeah, I meant to bring a better chair in here. We can switch it out with that one if you still want to go, but. I mean,
we covered.
We said plenty, I'm sure.
Yeah. Do we want to recap on what we actually wanted to talk about? Just that, like.
Yeah.
DIY geothermal could definitely work.
Yeah.
It depends on how it's applied and what you're trying to accomplish with it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
If you're just trying to make it more comfortable in the summers.
Yeah.
Totally would work, I think, in the way that you're describing, and I would love to see this actually accomplished. That would be super cool.
And even as a learning experience, so I can like even just teach people in an emergency type situation, like that's one of my main goals.
The problem is the average person, it doesn't know how electricity works for the most part.
Yeah.
Or like, all you need is a pump.
Yeah.
And some tubing. It's like, well, where do I find a pump? How do I power this pump? Oh, well, you have to wire it to a solar. There's a lot of prerequisite knowledge that I think
gets by people.
Yes. Because it's delegated.
Yeah.
That's really what
that's true too. There's a lot of specialization within our culture.
Yeah.
With the way that we run our education process. But, like, I was reading a thing today that said that like a third of people who graduate high school like never pick up a book to read again. And then even like half of the people who graduate college never pick up a book to read after college. It's like, God damn it.
Well, I'm guilty of that. I loved to read as a child. And even through high school, I would read, recreationally. But I've only read a couple books since I finished high school.
Time becomes a factor, too.
Time is definitely a thing. And
it is super hard. Like, it's even like, I'm reading 5 books at a time, and I've been reading 5 books at a time for years.
I was saying, I need to read this book literally cover to cover. Just go nuts. I was actually going to say, if you're interested, I could loan this to you so you can thumb through it and try to learn what you can from it.
Yeah, I'd be down. I'd be game for that.
Yeah.
I've read textbooks about solar, lots of things.
Yeah.
But it is still hard. It's like there's a certain barrier to reading too. That's especially like the initial. Like when you're sitting down to read for the first time, especially when you haven't read for a long time.
You want to do other things. You're like, I could be spending this time.
Not only that, but it like takes your brain a minute to like kind of reacclimate to it.
Right.
Like you read the first page, you have no idea what you just read.
Right.
And that just is discouraging. You're like, fuck, like I'm not very good at this, and like I don't want to do this. And then you go back and read it again and actually concentrate, and you're like, oh. That's a cool idea.
There's context here. Like it's not just a word followed by another word. Yeah.
It's funny too, like you were talking about how you like to read as a kid. I hated to read as a kid.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
and in high school.
Huh.
I never read until honestly like Fight Club grabbed a hold of me, and I ended up finding out that the author was Chuck Palahniuk. And so I went and read another one of his books called Survivor. That was like the first book that really drew me in, because it was just psychopathic, man. It was like he's like a sociological destroyer of worlds in like so many weird ways, and like me just being like a rural Ohio kid,
right? Yeah,
like I was
I mean I went to middle school in BFE. It was Ashland County, West Salem.
Yeah.
Was where I was in middle school. So I was like the weird skater kid.
Yeah.
The one skater kid out of my class of, 90 kids.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Yeah, so I always...
But I loved reading at the same time.
Nice.
Which was weird. weird times.
Yeah,
Go to therapy.
There isn't a human life, that isn't odd in some formation.
Yeah.
If you live long enough, you experience everything, and I don't know. There's just so many different. Like I've always thought, like if there's just like maybe one soul that exists for all of humanity or the entire universe per se, right? Like maybe like it's built so that every type of life possible that can happen will happen. And so that every possible lesson that we can learn out of this system is being extracted through, one idea similar to this is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? Like,
okay, yeah.
They built a computer to answer the question of the meaning of life, and it comes up with 42.
Yeah.
And then it says, well, what's the question? And he's like, well, I don't really feel like answering that question. So he's like, the computer said that. And the computer's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build you another computer to answer what the question is to my answer. Right? And so that computer that he built was Earth. I love that. The poetry of it. I just love everything about that idea, and just like the absurdity of it, and also just like how real that feels sometimes, and so many levels of that hit so hard for me. Anyway, not to go off on every single tangent in the entire universe.
No, man,
right there.
It's been fun. This conversation has been all over the place and back and away and back again.
I haven't podcasted in too long, so I'm just like kind of releasing right now.
Well, I mean, we could always take another run at it and do like a more short, concise, kind of more topic-oriented conversation.
Yeah. Well, we talked a lot about geothermal.
Yeah.
I mean, in a broad context. If you want to know more about geothermal, come to my talk a week from today, which would be August 31st, 2022.
Where's that happening?
Here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm giving
right. You were saying this Sunday, is it?
It's actually going to be on a Wednesday.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I just kind of picked a day in the middle of the week.
I thought that was the cookout fundraiser for Jubilee Go.
That's going to be September 4th.
Okay.
That's a Sunday, but
gotcha.
Yeah. Thanks for correcting me on where I need to go and what I need to learn next.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hope I provided some insight, and hope I didn't make too much of a fool of myself to anybody who does know anything about HVAC. I'm still hungry for knowledge when it comes to what I do. So it's a constant learning. Yeah. Constant learning.
I love setting these things up too, just because it provides like a solid time and space, Right. It's like, well, this thing's coming up. I need to know a couple things to say about this thing, so I'm gonna.
So, do you feel like I've provided you with more information than you had? Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, you clarified a lot to me, actually.
Okay. Good.
Because I mean, maybe I didn't have a lot of questions, but like the questions that you were answering were like connected big dots in that puzzle to me.
Gotcha. Good. Then I feel like I served my purpose.
Yeah, the fog has lifted.
Good. That's awesome. I'll definitely leave you with this book for a bit. Let you thumb through it.
Sweet. Hell yeah.
I've got a bunch of stuff highlighted and stuff from when I was taking classes, but yeah. It's been fun, BB.
Friday on Jubilee Go. Let's do that.
Yeah. I'd rather be on Friday. That'd be sick, because we'd be playing the same night as Zip Zap.
Yes.
Come to Jubilee Go.
I'm going to book us with somewhere near Zip Zap and somewhere near Stereotypes, because I want to book a show with them, with us, because that would work really well with our groups. And then also, I'm going to try to get Big Pop from Akron to be close to us too, because I want us to play shows together. Okay. It's a strategy. I'm just coercing everyone to be in the same time and space together.
Right. Yeah. So that way you're like waiting for your set, but also watching the other bands.
Yes. Exactly.
I like it. A little bit of behind the scenes manipulation.
Yeah. Just exploiting my own like. But that's why you throw a festival. Cool, man. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
Badass. Thanks
for having me. This was fun.
Hell
we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, I'm down for sure.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Later. Yeah.